Rain hammered the windows. Blood dripped from Ivy Mercer's split lip onto the clinic floor. Her husband's fists had painted fresh bruises across her ribs. Again. Dr. Selena Vale stood between them with nothing but a phone when Cassian raised his hand for another blow. Then the door opened. Roman Dragunov stepped inside like death arriving early, and the most feared crime boss in Chicago locked eyes with the one woman who would never fear him. That moment changed everything. This is their story. Brutal, obsessive, inevitable. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like dying insects. Selena's hands moved with practiced precision as she cleaned the gash above Ivy's left eyebrow, but her jaw stayed clenched tight enough to crack teeth. This was the fourth time in 6 months. Fourth time Ivy had walked through the clinic doors after midnight with new bruises blooming like poisonous flowers across her skin. Fourth time she'd whispered the same lies. I fell down the stairs. I wasn't paying attention. It was my fault. Selena didn't respond immediately. She'd learned that pushing too hard only drove victims deeper into their shells. Instead, she worked in silence, cataloging injuries with the cold efficiency of someone who'd seen this pattern destroy too many lives. Split lip, cracked rib, maybe 2. Fingerprints around the throat, dark purple against pale skin, each one a perfect oval testament to violence. The examination room felt suffocating despite its size. Rain lashed the windows, overlooking downtown Chicago's glittering skyline, turning the city lights into bleeding watercolors. It was nearly 2 in the morning. The clinic had closed hours ago, but Selena never turned away emergencies, especially not cases like this. Ivy. Selena's voice came out softer than she intended. We need to document this, just photos. You don't have to file a report if you're not ready, but no. The word exploded from Ivy's mouth with such force that she winced, hand flying to her bruised ribs. No photos, no reports, nothing. Selena set down the antiseptic and met Ivy's eyes directly. 26 years old, trust fund princess married to trust fund royalty, the kind of woman who should have had the world bowing at her feet. Instead, she looked hollowed out, haunted, like something vital had been carved from her chest and replaced with terror. He tracks me, Ivy whispered, her fingers twisted in her lap, knuckles white. I don't know how, but he always knows. Where I go, who I talk to. Last time I tried to tell someone, he knew before I even got home. He broke my wrist in 3 places and told me I was clumsy. The casual brutality of it made Selena's stomach turn. She'd been working in trauma medicine for 8 years. First in Cook County's ER, now in this private practice that mostly served low-income neighborhoods. She'd stitched knife wounds, treated overdoses, held dying patients' hands when no one else would. But something about Ivy's fear felt different, deeper, like staring into a well with no bottom. There are shelters, Selena started, safe houses, places he can't. You don't understand. Ivy's laugh came out broken. Cassian Mercer doesn't lose. His family owns half the judges in this city. His father plays golf with the police commissioner. The one time I tried to file a restraining order, it disappeared from the system before the ink dried. I'm not a person to him. I'm property. Selena wanted to argue, wanted to promise that the system would protect her, that justice existed, that monsters eventually faced consequences. But she'd seen too many women return with worse injuries after trusting institutions that failed them. So instead, she finished bandaging Ivy's wounds in heavy silence and wrote prescriptions for pain medication strong enough to let her sleep through the worst of it. My number's on the card, Selena said, pressing it into Ivy's palm. Anytime, day or night, you call me. Ivy pocketed it without looking, and Selena knew she'd throw it away the moment Cassian asked. Fear had that effect. It made people complicit in their own destruction. After Ivy left through the back entrance, another precaution against being seen, Selena stood alone in the examination room, staring at the blood-stained gauze in the trash. Rain continued its assault on the windows. The city stretched below, beautiful and indifferent, full of people warm and safe in their beds while others bled in the shadows. She should have gone home, Should have locked up the clinic and driven back to her cramped apartment where nobody needed her for a few hours. Instead, she stood there replaying every detail of Ivy's injuries, already knowing that in a few weeks or months, Ivy would be back, with worse damage. Or maybe she wouldn't come back at all. Maybe next time, Cassian Mercer would go too far, and Selena would read about it in the obituaries while sipping morning coffee. The thought made her furious. She was still angry 30 minutes later when footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Selena froze. The clinic was locked. Security system armed. No one should have been able to get inside. The footsteps grew louder, heavier. Someone moving with purpose through the darkened hallway toward her office. Her hand found her phone just as the door slammed open. Cassian Mercer stood in the doorway, and Selena understood immediately why Ivy lived in terror. He looked like money. Tailored suit despite the late hour. Perfectly styled blonde hair. The kind of handsome face that graced charity galas and society pages. But his eyes were wrong, cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who'd never been told no in his entire life and wouldn't know how to process the word if he heard it. "Where is she?" His voice carried the dangerous calm of someone accustomed to obedience. Selena's fingers tightened around her phone. "You need to leave. Now." Cassian smiled. It never touched his eyes. "That's my wife's blood on your table, Dr. Vale. I have a right to know where she is. You have no rights here. This is private property, and you're trespassing." He stepped inside. The door clicked shut behind him, and suddenly the examination room felt impossibly small. Cassian moved with the lazy confidence of a predator cornering prey. No rush, no urgency. Just the certainty that he'd already won. "See, here's what's going to happen," Cassian said conversationally. "You're going to tell me where Ivy went. Then you're going to forget she was ever here. And if you're smart, you'll stop encouraging my wife's little tantrums. She gets confused sometimes, thinks she has options." He laughed softly. "But we both know better." Selena's thumb found the emergency call button on her phone. "Get out, or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." Cassian's smile widened. "My father and Commissioner Hayes have dinner every Thursday." "But sure, make your call. See how far it gets you." He was right. Selena knew it with sickening certainty. Men like Cassian Mercer existed above consequences, insulated by wealth and connections that rendered them functionally untouchable. She'd seen it before. Watched powerful men walk away from crimes that would have destroyed anyone else. But she wasn't about to hand Ivy over. "Last chance," Selena said, voice steadier than she felt. "Leave." Cassian's expression shifted. The facade of civility cracked, revealing something uglier underneath. "You self-righteous bitch! You think you're saving her? You're signing her death warrant. Ivy belongs to me. What I do with my property is none of your—" He moved fast. Grabbed Selena's wrist hard enough to bruise, yanking the phone from her hand. It clattered across the floor, his other hand fisted in her hair, jerking her head back. "Nobody interferes with my marriage," he hissed. "Nobody!" Selena drove her knee up hard, caught him in the thigh. Not where she'd aimed, but close enough. Cassian swore and shoved her backward. She hit the examination table, pain exploding through her hip. He raised his fist. The door opened. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Cassian froze mid-motion, and Selena watched all the color drain from his face as he turned slowly toward the doorway. Roman Dragunov stood there. Selena had never seen him in person before, but recognition hit immediately. Everyone in Chicago knew that face. It appeared in business magazines and criminal investigations with equal frequency. The man who owned half the city's skyline through legitimate real estate ventures while simultaneously running the most powerful organized crime network in the Midwest. He looked exactly like the photographs. Early 40s, tall, built like someone who'd spent a lifetime turning violence into art form. Sharp suit that probably cost more than Selena's car. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been handsome if not for the absolute absence of warmth in his expression. But it was his eyes that made Selena's breath catch. Cold, controlled, utterly devoid of mercy. Those eyes assessed the scene in a single glance. Selena pressed against the examination table with bruises already forming on her wrist. Cassian standing over her with his fist still raised, the overturned chair, her phone on the floor. Roman's expression never changed. "Mercer." His voice came out quiet, almost gentle. Somehow that made it more terrifying. You have 3 seconds to remove your hand from the doctor. Cassian released Selina immediately, stumbling backward like he'd been shocked. Mr. Dragunov, I didn't... This isn't what it looks like. She's been hiding my wife, interfering in my marriage. 2 seconds? I have every right to know where Ivy is. She's my... 1. Cassian went silent, the kind of silence that came from pure survival instinct. In the space of heartbeats, he'd transformed from predator to prey, and everyone in the room knew it. Roman stepped fully inside. He moved with the unhurried precision of someone who'd never needed to rush, because everything eventually bent to his will. He stopped 3 feet from Cassian, hands loose at his sides. No visible weapons, no security detail. He didn't need them. You're going to walk out of this building, Roman said in that same terrifyingly calm voice. You're going to go home, and you're never going to come near Dr. Vale or her patients again. Do you understand? Cassian's jaw worked. My wife is no longer your concern. You can't just... Roman's hand moved so fast Selina barely tracked it. One moment, Cassian was talking. The next, he was slammed against the wall with Roman's forearm across his throat. The impact rattled medical equipment on nearby shelves. I don't make suggestions, Roman said softly. When I tell you something, it's already decided. The only variable is how much you suffer before accepting reality. He leaned closer, and Cassian's face turned purple. I've been looking for an excuse to gut you like the animal you are. Your father's political connections won't save you. His money won't save you. If I find out you've touched your wife again, if you've even spoken her name, I will personally ensure your death takes days. And I promise you'll beg for it to end hours before I let it. He released Cassian, who collapsed to his knees, gasping. Now get out! Cassian fled. The sound of his expensive shoes slapping against tile echoed through the empty clinic, followed by the crash of the exit door. Then silence. Selina's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrenaline made her hands shake. She should have felt relieved, grateful. Instead, she felt like she'd just traded one monster for another. Roman turned to face her fully for the first time. Up close, he was even more intimidating, not because of his size or the tailored menace of his appearance, but because of the intelligence burning behind those cold eyes. This wasn't some thug who'd stumbled into power through brutality. This was a man who'd built an empire through strategy, ruthlessness, and the kind of calculated violence that left no witnesses. Are you injured? His voice had softened fractionally, still controlled, still dangerous, but no longer promising death. Selina found her voice. I'm fine. Your wrist is bruising. She glanced down. He was right. Purple marks were already blooming where Cassian had grabbed her. I've had worse. Roman's eyes narrowed slightly, and Selina realized her mistake. She just revealed that this wasn't her first encounter with violence, that she was familiar enough with injury to categorize it. Most people didn't have that particular skill set. Where's Ivy Mercer? Roman asked. Every instinct screamed at Selina to lie. Why? Because in approximately 10 minutes, Cassian will remember he's more afraid of losing his wife than he is of me. He'll come back with friends, lawyers, possibly police he's bought, and you'll have no legal ground to stand on. Roman's expression remained neutral. I'm offering an alternative. What kind of alternative? The permanent kind. Selina's stomach dropped. If you think I'm going to let you, I'm not going to kill her husband, Dr. Vale. Roman's mouth almost curved. Almost. Unless he gives me a reason. What I'm offering is protection, a safe location where Cassian's money and connections mean nothing, where Ivy can breathe without checking over her shoulder. Why? Selina demanded. Why do you care about some random woman you've never met? For the first time, something shifted in Roman's expression. Not quite emotion, more like the shadow of something that might have been human once, before violence and power hollowed it out. Because I was watching security footage from your building, he said quietly. Cassian's been stalking your clinic for weeks. I've seen him follow Ivy here twice before. Tonight, I saw him force entry, and I decided he needed to understand there are consequences for hunting wounded animals on my territory. Your territory? Everything in this city is my territory, Doctor. The question is whether you're smart enough to accept help when it's offered. Selina wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to get out, to take his mafia kingpin savior complex somewhere else. She knew what Roman Dragunov was. The rumors were endless: disappearances, murders, corruption that stretched from street corners to city hall. He was everything wrong with Chicago wrapped in expensive suits and cold authority. But she looked at the bloodied gauze in the trash, thought about Ivy's terrified whisper, "He tracks me. He always finds me," and realized she was out of options. "She's staying at the women's shelter on West Madison," Selina heard herself say. "But they're not equipped to handle someone like Cassian long term." Roman pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then pocketed it. "Someone will collect her within the hour. She'll be taken to a secure location, private apartment, full security detail. Legal team will handle divorce proceedings and restraining orders." Just like that? Just like that. "And what do you want in return?" Roman studied her with those unreadable eyes. "Nothing. Everyone wants something. Perhaps." He moved toward the door, then paused. "But what I want isn't something you're ready to give." The words sent a chill down Selina's spine that had nothing to do with fear. "I don't even know you," she said. Roman glanced back over his shoulder, and for just a moment, Selina saw something dangerous flicker in his expression. Not anger, not violence, something far more complicated. "That will change," he said quietly, "whether you want it to or not." Then he was gone, leaving Selina alone with the scent of expensive cologne and the feeling that her entire life had just tilted on its axis without permission. She stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway. The rain had stopped. Chicago sprawled beyond the windows, its lights reflecting off wet pavement like scattered diamonds. Beautiful. Brutal. A city built on compromise and corruption, where monsters wore tailored suits and salvation came with a price she couldn't begin to calculate. Selina picked up her phone from the floor. No missed calls, no messages, just the quiet hum of a city that never slept and never cared who got hurt in the dark. She should have gone home. Should have locked up and pretended this night never happened. Instead, she called the women's shelter. "This is Dr. Vale," she said when they answered. "I need you to get Ivy Mercer somewhere safe. Someone's coming to pick her up. Don't ask questions. Just do it." She hung up before they could respond. Then she sat down in the examination chair and let herself shake. Bullcats. 3 hours later, Selina's apartment building looked the same as always. Crumbling brick facade, broken intercom, graffiti tagging the walls. She'd moved here 5 years ago because the rent was cheap and the location convenient. Stayed because she'd learned to ignore the noise and the neighborhood's rough edges. Tonight, it looked different. A black sedan idled at the curb. Selina's exhaustion evaporated instantly, replaced by sharp alertness. She approached slowly, keys threaded between her fingers like makeshift claws. The car's windows were tinted dark enough to be illegal. The back door opened. Roman Dragunov stepped out. He'd changed clothes. Now he wore dark jeans and a black wool coat over a simple shirt. Less intimidating without the suit, almost normal. Until you looked at his eyes and remembered exactly what he was. "What are you doing here?" Selina demanded. "Ivy settled. Secure location. Legal team is already drafting paperwork." Roman's expression remained neutral. "I wanted to update you personally. You have my number. You could have called." "I could have." The implication hung between them. He'd wanted to see her, wanted to be here, standing on her doorstep at 5 in the morning while the city woke up around them. Selina should have been afraid. Should have told him to leave and never come back. Instead, she found herself studying him with the same clinical detachment she used on patients, looking for tells, weaknesses, something human beneath the criminal facade. "She asked about you," Roman said quietly. "Wanted to know who you were, why you'd risk yourself for her." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that you're a doctor who doesn't know when to walk away from lost causes." "Is that what you think Ivy is? A lost cause?" "No." Roman's gaze held hers. "That's what I think you are." The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like recognition, like being seen by someone who understood exactly what it meant to exist in the spaces between light and dark, trying to do good with methods that never stayed clean. "I don't need saving," Selina said. "I know." Roman stepped closer. Not threatening, just present, solid. "That's why you terrify me." Before Selina could respond, his phone buzzed. Roman checked it and something cold flickered across his face. "I have to go," he said. "Lock your door. Don't answer for anyone you don't recognize. My men are watching the building, but—" "Your men are watching my building?" "Cassian knows where you live, Dr. Vale, and he's not the type to accept humiliation gracefully." Roman's voice hardened. "So yes, my men are watching your building. They'll stay until this situation resolves." "I didn't ask for protection." "You didn't ask for any of this, but you got involved anyway." He moved back toward the sedan. "That's your pattern. Walking into fires without checking if the building's about to collapse." "And what's your pattern?" Selina called after him. "Playing savior to women you don't know?" Roman paused with his hand on the car door. When he looked back, his expression was unreadable. "No," he said softly. "Just you." He got in the sedan and drove away, leaving Selina standing alone on the sidewalk as dawn broke over Chicago's skyline. She went inside, locked 3 deadbolts, and sat on her couch without turning on the lights. Her hands had stopped shaking. That terrified her most of all, because somewhere between Cassian's attack and Roman's intervention, something fundamental had shifted. The careful walls she'd built between her life and the city's darkness had developed cracks. And now Roman Dragunov stood in those fractures, looking at her like she was something worth destroying his empire to possess. Selina closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but all she saw was Roman's cold expression promising violence. And all she felt was the unwelcome recognition that maybe, just maybe, she was exactly as broken as the people she tried to save. The next morning arrived with winter sunlight and the sharp clarity that came from functioning on 2 hours of sleep. Selina went through her routine mechanically: shower, coffee, protein bars she barely tasted. The bruises on her wrist had darkened overnight, purple and green fingerprints that made her patients do double takes. She told them she'd slipped on ice. Everyone believed her. Lies were easy when people wanted them to be true. The clinic hummed with its usual chaos: respiratory infections from the cold weather, minor injuries, follow-up appointments. Selina moved through it all with practiced efficiency, pushing thoughts of Roman Dragunov and midnight interventions into a mental box labeled "Deal with Later." That lasted until noon, when her receptionist appeared in the doorway looking worried. "Dr. Vale, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." Selina's stomach dropped. "Who?" "He didn't give a name, just said to tell you it's about Ivy Mercer." She found a man in her waiting room who didn't belong there. Mid-30s, expensive suit, the kind of quiet competence that screamed security professional rather than patient. He stood when she entered, extending a hand. "Dr. Vale, my name is Marcus Chen. I work for Mr. Dragunov." Of course he did. Selina didn't take his hand. "What do you want?" Marcus didn't seem offended. "Mr. Dragunov asked me to brief you on the situation. Can we speak privately?" Every instinct told her to refuse, to draw a line right here and keep Roman's world separate from hers. But concern for Ivy overrode caution. She led Marcus to her office and closed the door. "Ivy's safe," Marcus said immediately. "The apartment is secure, round-the-clock security. We've already filed a restraining order and initiated divorce proceedings. Mr. Dragunov's legal team is handling everything." "That's not possible. These things take time." "Most things do," Marcus agreed. "But Mr. Dragunov has considerable resources and connections. When he prioritizes something, it moves fast." "Why?" Selina demanded. "Why is he doing this?" Marcus studied her with assessing eyes. "You'd have to ask him that yourself." "I'm asking you." "Then you're asking the wrong person." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Mr. Dragunov wanted you to have this. Keys to the apartment where Ivy's staying, security codes, emergency contact numbers. He thought you might want to check on her personally." Selina took the envelope without opening it. "Tell him I don't need his help. With respect, doctor, you're already involved. The question isn't whether you'll accept Mr. Dragunov's assistance. It's whether you'll do so willingly or spend the next few weeks fighting a battle you can't win." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." Marcus moved toward the door. "Cassian Mercer is dangerous, wealthy, connected. He won't forget what happened last night. And without Mr. Dragunov's protection, both you and Ivy are vulnerable." He paused with his hand on the doorknob. "You seem like someone who makes smart decisions, doctor. I'd suggest making one now." Then he was gone, leaving Selena alone with the envelope and the sinking realization that she'd already made her choice the moment she'd given Roman information about Ivy's location. There was no backing out now. She opened the envelope and found a handwritten note inside. Address below. Come whenever you're ready. I won't be there. Roman's handwriting matched his personality. Controlled, precise, giving nothing away. Selena crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then retrieved it 5 minutes later and smoothed out the wrinkles. The apartment was on the 40th floor of a building Selena couldn't have afforded, even if she saved for a decade. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago River, marble floors, designer furniture, the kind of place that existed entirely separate from the world she knew. Ivy opened the door looking different, still bruised, still fragile. But something in her posture had changed, like someone had cut invisible chains and she was slowly remembering how to stand upright without their weight. Dr. Vale. Ivy's smile was tentative but real. You didn't have to come. I wanted to make sure you were okay. They moved into the apartment's vast living room. Security guards stood discreetly in the hallway outside, and Selena noticed cameras in every corner. Roman wasn't taking chances. This is insane, Ivy said softly, gesturing at their surroundings. Yesterday I was hiding in a shelter with 20 other women sharing 4 bathrooms. Today I'm living like royalty. How do you feel about it? Ivy was quiet for a long moment. Terrified, she finally admitted. I keep waiting for Cassian to break down the door, or for Mr. Dragunov to change his mind and throw me out. Nothing this good happens to people like me. Selena understood that feeling too well. The instinct to distrust salvation because suffering had become normal. Comfortable, even. At least you knew where you stood when everything hurt. You deserve safety, Selena said firmly. You deserve a life where you're not constantly afraid. Do I? Ivy's laugh came out broken. I married him, Doctor. Cassian didn't hide who he was. I saw the signs and ignored them because the money was good and my family expected it. I walked into that cage with my eyes open. That doesn't mean you deserved what happened, doesn't it? They sat in silence while the city sprawled below them. Somewhere out there, Cassian was probably planning his revenge. And Roman was doing whatever it was crime lords did when they weren't rescuing women from abusive marriages. Why is Mr. Dragunov helping me? Ivy asked suddenly. I'm nobody, just another stupid girl who made bad choices. Selena didn't have an answer. She'd been asking herself the same question. Men like Roman Dragunov didn't move empires for strangers out of altruism. There was always an angle, always a price. But looking at Ivy now, truly looking at her without the fear painting every expression, Selena saw someone worth saving. Maybe Roman saw it too. Or maybe he had his own reasons that had nothing to do with mercy. I don't know, Selena admitted, but you're safe now. That's what matters. She stayed another hour checking Ivy's injuries and making sure she had everything she needed. Then she left, nodding at the security guards who watched her departure with professional detachment. The elevator ride down felt like descending from heaven into hell. Back to her real life. Back to the clinic and the apartment and the careful distance she maintained from Chicago's underworld. Except that distance no longer existed. She'd crossed a line the moment she'd given Roman information about Ivy. And now she stood on the other side, looking back at the safe, normal life she'd built and realizing she couldn't reach it anymore. Her phone buzzed as she reached the lobby. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? Dr. Vale. Roman's voice filled her ear. Calm, controlled, dangerous. Did you find everything satisfactory? How did you get this number? Please, I own half this city. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. She heard ambient noise in the background, traffic, voices. He was outside somewhere. Ivy looks better already, less afraid. You've been watching the cameras. Of course. Selena's hand tightened on her phone. The casual invasion of privacy should have outraged her. Instead, she found herself oddly unsurprised. This was Roman's world. Control, observation, making sure every variable stayed exactly where he wanted it. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Roman was silent for so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, because I saw her husband raise his fist to you and I wanted to kill him. That's not normal, Dr. Vale. That level of rage over a stranger's safety. So I'm trying to understand it. And until I do, Ivy stays protected. I'm not your problem to solve. No, Roman agreed. You're something much worse. What's that? You're the problem I can't stop thinking about. He disconnected before Selina could respond. She stood in the marble lobby with her phone pressed to her ear, listening to dead air and feeling the last of her carefully constructed walls crumble into dust. Selina didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the water-stained ceiling of her apartment while traffic noise filtered through thin walls and Roman's words played on repeat in her head. You're the problem I can't stop thinking about. The statement wasn't romantic. It was a warning, an admission that something had shifted between them, something neither of them had asked for and neither could control. She got up at dawn and went for a run along the lake despite the freezing wind cutting through her jacket. Exercise usually helped clear her mind. Not today. Every stride brought fresh questions without answers. Why had Roman intervened? What did he really want? And why did the thought of seeing him again make her pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with fear? By the time she reached the clinic at 8, exhaustion had settled into her bones like concrete. Her first patient was a gunshot wound. Gang violence, the kid said, though his eyes told a different story. Selina stitched him up without judgment, prescribed antibiotics, and moved to the next room. Routine held her together, until her receptionist knocked on the door during lunch. Dr. Vale, there's a delivery for you. Selina looked up from her sandwich. What kind of delivery? Flowers. A lot of flowers. She found her office transformed. Roses covered every available surface, deep red blooms that must have cost thousands. No card. No note. Just dozens of arrangements filling the space with their cloying perfume. Her receptionist hovered in the doorway. Secret admirer? Something like that, Selina muttered. She knew who'd sent them. Roman was making a statement, staking a claim, reminding her that his world had reached into hers and wouldn't be easily extracted. Selina grabbed her phone and dialed the number he'd called from yesterday. He answered on the first ring. Dr. Vale. What the hell is this? You don't like roses? Roman's voice carried subtle amusement. I can send something else. I don't like being manipulated. Then you're in the wrong city. Selina's hand tightened on the phone. I'm not one of your assets, Dragunov. You don't get to send flowers and mark territory like I'm something you own. No, Roman agreed quietly. You're not something I own. You're something far more complicated. Which is? Come to dinner tonight and find out. Absolutely not. Why? Because I know what you are. I know what you do. And I'm not interested in becoming collateral damage in whatever game you're playing. Silence stretched between them. When Roman spoke again, his voice had lost its edge of amusement. This isn't a game, Selina, and you're already involved whether you want to be or not. Cassian knows you helped Ivy. He's not going to forget that. Then I'll deal with it. How? By filing a police report that goes nowhere? By trusting a system that's already failed everyone you've ever tried to protect? Roman's words cut with surgical precision. You're brilliant at patching wounds, Doctor, but you have no idea how to prevent them in the first place. And you do? I'm very effective at preventing problems, permanently. The casual threat made Selina's stomach turn. I don't want anyone hurt because of me. Too late. Roman's tone softened fractionally. Cassian's already planning his response. I have people watching him. He's contacted lawyers, private investigators, and some associates from his father's less savory business connections. Within the week, he'll make a move. The question is whether you'll let me protect you when he does. Selina wanted to argue, wanted to insist she didn't need protection from men in expensive suits playing violent games with each other. But she'd spent 8 years working trauma medicine. She knew what happened when pride overrode survival instinct. One dinner, she heard herself say. That's it. 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. I'll drive myself. Selina, those are my terms. Roman exhaled softly. Text me when you leave the clinic. I'll send you the address. He disconnected before she could respond. Selina stood among the roses, breathing their suffocating sweetness, and wondered when exactly she'd lost control of her own life. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a building Selina recognized from business magazines. One of Roman's legitimate ventures, a place where CEOs closed billion-dollar deals over Wagyu beef and wine older than she was. She'd expected opulence. What she found was something stranger. The entire floor was empty, not closed, just reserved. Every table sat vacant except one by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Roman stood when she entered, dressed in dark slacks and a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. Less formal than their previous encounters. More human, still dangerous. "You bought out the whole restaurant?" Selina stopped 3 feet from the table. "I value privacy." "This is insane." "Probably." Roman gestured to the chair across from him. "But I've never been accused of subtlety." Selina sat despite every instinct screaming at her to leave. A waiter appeared from nowhere, poured wine she hadn't ordered, and vanished before she could protest. The city sprawled below them, millions of lights against winter darkness, beautiful and indifferent. "You're angry," Roman observed. "I'm exhausted." Selina took a long drink of wine. It tasted expensive. "I've spent the last 2 days trying to figure out your angle, what you want from me, why you're doing any of this." "Maybe I don't have an angle." "Everyone has an angle." "Then perhaps mine is simpler than you think." Roman leaned back, studying her with those cold, assessing eyes. "I saw something that offended me. I corrected it. End of story." "You don't strike me as someone easily offended." "I'm not." "Which should tell you something." The statement hung between them, heavy with implication. Selina set down her wine glass carefully. "What do you want from me, Roman?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "I don't know yet. That's what terrifies me." "You don't seem like someone who gets terrified." "I'm not." Roman's expression never changed. "Until you." The word shouldn't have affected her. She barely knew this man. Knew only his reputation, his violence, his control. But something in his admission felt nakedly honest in a way nothing else between them had been. "I'm not interested in becoming someone's obsession," Selina said quietly. "Neither am I. But we don't always choose what we feel." "Then choose to walk away." "I could." Roman met her eyes directly. "But then Cassian will eventually hurt you. Maybe not today. Maybe not this month. But eventually, he'll decide you're an easier target than Ivy. And by the time I hear about it, you'll already be bleeding." "So this is about guilt?" "This is about preventing something I'll regret." He leaned forward, and Selina caught the faint scent of his cologne. Cedar. And something darker. "I've done terrible things, Selina. Things that would make you look at me with the same revulsion you showed Cassian. But I'm very good at protecting what matters to me. And somewhere in the last 48 hours, you started mattering." "That's not rational." "No, it's not." The waiter returned with appetizers Selina didn't remember ordering. She picked at the food without tasting it, hyper-aware of Roman watching her with the same intensity most people reserved for dissecting problems they couldn't solve. "Tell me about yourself," he said after the waiter left again. "Why?" "Because I want to know." "You probably already ran a background check." Roman's mouth almost curved. Almost. "I know the facts. Where you went to medical school, how long you've been in Chicago, the charity work, the low-income patients. What I don't know is why." "Why what?" "Why you care so much about people who can't pay you. Why you work 80-hour weeks treating gunshot wounds and overdoses when you could be making 10 times your salary in private practice. Why you walk into fires without checking if they're going to consume you." Selina was quiet for a long time. The city lights reflected in the windows like scattered stars. She'd never talked about this. Not to friends, not to colleagues, certainly not to dangerous crime lords who'd inserted themselves into her life without permission. But something about Roman's stillness invited confession. "My mother," she said finally. "She was sick for years, cancer. We didn't have insurance, couldn't afford the treatments she needed." Selina stared at her wine glass. "I watched her die slowly because the system decided her life wasn't worth saving. So I became a doctor, and I decided I'd never let money determine who deserved care." Roman didn't offer platitudes, didn't tell her he was sorry, just nodded slowly like she'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. "That's why you can't walk away from people like Ivy," he said. "That's why I can't walk away from anyone. Even me." The question caught her off guard. Selina looked up and found Roman watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Not quite vulnerable, but close, like he'd cracked open just enough to show her something real beneath the armor. "I don't know what you are to me yet," she admitted. "Then figure it out." Roman's voice dropped lower. "Because Cassian's not going to wait politely while you decide if I'm worth trusting." As if summoned by his name, Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something cold flickered across his face. "What?" Selina demanded. Cassian just posted bail for 2 enforcers from his father's organization. Roman set down his phone with careful precision. Men with records for assault and intimidation. He's escalating. Fear spiked through Selina's chest. "What does that mean?" "It means he's not coming after you directly. He's outsourcing the violence so his hands stay clean." Roman's expression had shifted back to the cold mask she recognized. "How many exits does your apartment building have?" "2. Why?" "Because as of tonight, you're not going back there." "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Roman stood, moving toward the windows. "I have a secure property on the north side, gated, full security. You'll stay there until this situation resolves. I'm not moving into your house." "I didn't say my house. I have multiple properties." "I don't care how many properties you have. I'm not—" "Selina." Roman turned, and the look in his eyes stopped her mid-sentence. "I'm not asking. Cassian's playing by different rules now. Men like the ones he just bailed out don't make polite threats. They hurt people, badly, and they're very good at making it look like accidents." "Then I'll go to the police." "And tell them what? That you're afraid of 2 men who haven't actually done anything yet? The police won't move until after you're injured. That's how the system works. You know that." He was right. Selina hated that he was right. She'd seen it play out dozens of times, victims reaching out for help only to be told there was nothing law enforcement could do until an actual crime occurred. By then, it was usually too late. "I can't just abandon my life," she said quietly. "You're not abandoning it, you're protecting it." Roman moved closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. "Stay at the property, keep working at the clinic. My security will shadow you. In a week, maybe 2, Cassian will realize this approach isn't working and try something else. We'll adjust accordingly. And if he doesn't give up, then I'll handle it permanently." The casual promise of violence should have repulsed her. Instead, Selina felt a sick sort of relief. Because she was tired. Tired of fighting systems that didn't work. Tired of watching good people suffer while the powerful walked away unscathed. Tired of pretending she could fix everything through proper channels and moral high ground. Maybe Roman's way was monstrous, but it was also effective. 1 week, she heard herself say. That's all. 1 week, Roman agreed, but they both knew it was a lie. The property was a converted brownstone in a neighborhood Selina couldn't have afforded with a decade's salary. 3 stories. Original hardwood floors. Furniture that managed to look both expensive and lived in. Security cameras covered every angle, and 2 guards stood post outside in a black SUV. This is temporary, Selina told herself as Roman showed her through the rooms. He didn't respond, just handed her keys, security codes, and a phone that he said only connected to him and his head of security. I have my own phone, Selina protested. That phone is trackable, hackable. Cassian's people could use it to monitor your location. Roman set the new phone on the kitchen counter. This one's encrypted, untraceable. Keep it with you. This is insane. This is necessary. They stood in the kitchen while winter darkness pressed against the windows. Selina felt the weight of every decision that had led her here. Helping Ivy, giving Roman information, accepting protection she'd never asked for. The trajectory was clear. She'd stepped into Roman's world, and now gravity was pulling her deeper whether she wanted it or not. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. Roman was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. Because letting you get hurt isn't an option I'm willing to consider. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. He left shortly after, taking his security detail with him. But Selina knew they were still out there, watching, protecting. Making sure Cassian's enforcers never got close enough to follow through on whatever violence they'd been paid to inflict. She has explored the brownstone slowly, found clothes in her size hanging in the master bedroom closet, casual wear, professional outfits, even pajamas still in their packaging. The bathroom held expensive toiletries, The kitchen was stocked with food. Roman had anticipated everything, planned for her acceptance before she'd even agreed. The realization should have angered her. Instead, Selena felt something uncomfortably close to gratitude. Because beneath the control and manipulation, Roman was keeping her safe with the kind of thoroughness most people only fantasized about. She took a long shower, changed into borrowed clothes that fit perfectly, and tried to sleep in a bed that cost more than her car. Her phone buzzed around midnight, not the encrypted one Roman had given her, her real phone. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? Heavy breathing, then a man's voice, rough and amused. Dr. Vale, you're a hard woman to find these days. Selena sat up fast, heart hammering. Who is this? Someone with a message from Cassian Mercer. He wants you to know he hasn't forgotten what you did. Taking his wife. Involving Dragunov, making him look weak. The voice paused. He wanted me to tell you that running won't save you. Eventually, Dragunov's going to get bored. And when he does, you'll be all alone, unprotected, and we'll be waiting. The line went dead. Selena's hands shook as she grabbed the encrypted phone and dialed the only number programmed into it. Roman answered immediately. What's wrong? Someone just called me, threatened me, said Cassian, I'm on my way. Lock the doors. Don't go near the windows. He hung up. Selena sat in the dark bedroom with both phones clutched in her hands while fear crawled up her spine like ice. She'd known intellectually that Cassian was dangerous, known he wouldn't let Ivy's escape go unanswered, but hearing the casual promise of violence delivered in a stranger's amused voice made it real in a way nothing else had. She'd become a target, and the only thing standing between her and whatever Cassian's people had planned was a crime lord who decided she mattered for reasons neither of them fully understood. Headlights appeared outside 15 minutes later. Roman entered through the front door moving fast, flanked by 2 security guards. He found Selena in the living room and stopped, his expression cycling through relief and cold fury before settling on dangerous calm. Give me your phone, the one they called. Selena handed it over. Roman passed it to one of his guards, who disappeared into another room. They're tracing the number, Roman said, though Cassian's people aren't stupid enough to use anything trackable. He said you'd get bored eventually, that I'd be alone. Selena hated how small her voice sounded. Is he right? Roman crossed the room in 3 strides. Before Selena could react, he'd pulled her against him. Not roughly, but firmly enough that she felt the tension vibrating through his frame. Listen to me carefully, he said quietly. Cassian Mercer is a coward who hides behind money and hired violence. He sent that message because he wants you afraid. Wants you to think I'll abandon you. But I don't abandon my people, Selena. Ever. I'm not your people. Yes. Roman's hand came up to cup the back of her head. You are. Selena should have pulled away. Should have reminded herself that this man was dangerous, that his protection came with strings she couldn't begin to untangle. Instead, she let herself lean into his solid warmth while her heart hammered against her ribs. I hate this, she whispered. I know. I hate that I need you. I know that too. Roman's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. But needing someone isn't weakness, Selena. It's just reality. And our reality is that Cassian made you a target the moment you helped Ivy. Everything that's happened since then is just consequences playing out. He held her for a long moment while the security guards murmured in the next room and Chicago hummed beyond the windows. Eventually, Roman eased back, though his hands stayed on her shoulders. You should try to sleep, he said. Will you stay? The question slipped out before Selena could stop it. Roman's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper that he buried too quickly to identify. That's not a good idea. I don't care. Selena trailed off, unsure how to articulate the terror still crawling through her veins. I don't want to be alone right now. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once and moved toward the couch. I'll be right here. Try to rest. Selena went back to the bedroom but left the door open. She could hear Roman moving around downstairs, his low voice as he spoke with security. Eventually, the house went quiet except for the ambient sounds of the city beyond the walls. She didn't sleep, just lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and wondered when exactly she'd started trusting a monster more than she trusted the world that was supposed to protect her. Mbwek. Morning arrived with weak sunlight and the smell of coffee drifting up from downstairs. Selina found Roman in the kitchen, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, looking like he hadn't slept either. "Any word on the call?" she asked. "Burner phone, untraceable." Roman poured coffee into a mug and slid it across the counter. "But we know it was one of the men Cassian bailed out. Marcus recognized the voice pattern from surveillance footage. So what now?" "Now I send a message of my own." The cold promise in his tone made Selina's stomach clench. "Roman, they threatened you, Selina, in my house, using information they shouldn't have been able to access." His expression was carved from ice. "That requires a response. I don't want anyone hurt because of me." "Too late. This stopped being about what you want the moment Cassian decided you were acceptable collateral." Roman set down his coffee with careful precision. "I'm going to make it very clear what happens when people threaten my interests, and you need to decide if you can live with the methods I use." Selina wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be another way, a solution that didn't involve violence and intimidation. But she'd spent 8 years watching the system fail, watching abusers walk free while their victims lived in terror, watching good people destroyed because the law moved too slowly or not at all. Roman's way was brutal, but it worked. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "Nothing you need to know the details of." He moved toward the door. "Stay here today. Call the clinic. Tell them you're sick. My men will watch the building." "I can't just hide." "Yes, you can." Roman turned back, and the look in his eyes stopped her protest cold. "Cassian's escalating faster than I anticipated. Until I understand his full strategy, you stay somewhere safe. That's not negotiable." He left before Selina could respond. She stood alone in the expensive kitchen with untouched coffee cooling in her hands, and realized she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She was complicit now, not just in accepting Roman's protection, but in tacitly approving whatever violence he was about to unleash. The knowledge should have sickened her. Instead, she felt nothing but relief. Dang. The call came 18 hours later. Selina had spent the day pacing through the brownstone like a caged animal, checking her phones obsessively, jumping at every sound. Roman security guards maintained their post outside. Marcus had stopped by around noon with takeout she barely touched. "Any updates?" she'd asked. "Mr. Dragunov is handling the situation," was all Marcus would say. Now her encrypted phone buzzed with Roman's number. "It's done," he said when she answered. "What's done?" "Cassian's people won't be bothering you again." Selina's throat went dry. "What did you do?" "What was necessary." Roman's voice was carefully neutral. "The men who called you last night are in the hospital. They'll survive, but they won't be working for anyone for a long time. And Cassian received a very direct message about what happens when he targets people under my protection." "Roman, I'm not sorry, Selina, and I won't apologize for keeping you safe." The line went quiet. Selina pressed the phone to her ear, listening to Roman breathe on the other end while her mind spun through implications she didn't want to examine too closely. "Are you coming back?" she finally asked. "Do you want me to?" "Yes," some treacherous part of her whispered. "I don't know." "Then I'll give you space to figure it out." Roman paused. "But Selina, what I said last night was true. I don't abandon my people. You're safe now. That's not going to change." He disconnected. Selina sat in the dimming light of the brownstone's living room while Chicago moved beyond the windows. Millions of people going about their lives, oblivious to the violence Roman had just orchestrated on her behalf. She should have felt guilty, should have felt horror at what he'd done. Instead, she felt only a sick sort of gratitude that someone finally cared enough to make the monsters bleed. 3 days passed. Selina returned to the clinic. Roman security shadowed her movements, always present but never intrusive. Patients came and went. She stitched wounds, prescribed medication, and moved through her routine with mechanical efficiency. But everything felt different now. She'd glimpsed the machinery beneath Chicago's surface, seen how power actually moved in the city, flowing through channels that had nothing to do with laws or democracy. Roman operated in those channels with the same surgical precision she brought to medicine, identifying problems, excising them, moving on without remorse. It should have repulsed her. It didn't. On the fourth day, Roman showed up at the clinic just before closing. He looked tired, not physically exhausted, but worn in some deeper way that showed in the lines around his eyes. Selina found him in her office, sitting in the chair patients usually occupied, staring at nothing. "You didn't call," he said without preamble. "I needed time to think." "And?" Selina closed the door and leaned against it. "And I don't know what we're doing, whatever this is between us. It's not normal, it's not healthy. You're a criminal, I'm a doctor. We exist in completely different worlds. Except we don't anymore." Roman met her eyes. "Your world and mine overlapped the moment I walked into this clinic. There's no separating them now. That's what scares me." "Good. Fear means you're paying attention." He stood, moving closer. "I'm not going to pretend I'm a good man, Selina. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details. But I keep my promises, and I promise to keep you safe." "Is that all this is? Some misguided protective instinct?" "No." Roman stopped inches away. "It stopped being just protection days ago. Now it's something else. Something I don't have words for yet." Selina's breath caught. This close, she could see the subtle tells he usually hid. The tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed like he was restraining himself from reaching for her. Roman Dragunov, the man who made politicians tremble and criminals disappear, looked at her like she was a problem he couldn't solve and couldn't walk away from. "This is insane," she whispered. "Probably. We barely know each other. I know you take your coffee black, that you volunteer every Saturday at the Southside Free Clinic, that you cry during surgery when you lose patients but never let anyone see, that you haven't taken a vacation in 3 years because you don't trust anyone else to care for your patients the way you do." Roman's voice dropped lower. "I know you better than you think. You've been watching me. I've been paying attention. There's a difference. Selina should have been angry, should have felt violated by the invasion of privacy. Instead, she felt seen in a way she'd never experienced, like Roman had looked past her walls and found something worth the effort of understanding. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Of all the people in this city, why do I matter to you?" Roman was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability she'd never heard before. "Because you walked into a burning building for someone you barely knew. Because you stood between Ivy and her abuser with nothing but a phone. Because you're the only person I've met in 20 years who looks at me and sees something more than a monster to be feared or a tool to be used. I do see a monster. I know, but you see the rest too. And that—" Roman trailed off, jaw working. "That makes you dangerous." "To who?" "To me." The admission hung between them like a physical thing. Selina's pulse hammered in her throat. Every instinct screamed warnings about Stockholm Syndrome and power imbalances, and all the 1,000 reasons getting involved with someone like Roman was a catastrophically bad idea. She kissed him anyway. Roman went still for half a heartbeat. Surprise, maybe, or shock that she'd made the first move. Then his hands came up to frame her face, and he kissed her back with the same controlled intensity he brought to everything else. Not rough, not demanding, just thorough and inevitable, like he'd been thinking about this moment for days, and now that it was happening, he intended to memorize every detail. Selina's fingers twisted in his shirt. Roman tasted like coffee, and something darker she couldn't identify. His thumb traced her jawline with surprising gentleness, while his other hand slid into her hair. The kiss deepened, and Selina felt years of careful control cracking under the weight of need she hadn't acknowledged until now. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "I know. Cassian will use it against us." "Let him try." Roman pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "You don't know what you're saying. Once people realize you matter to me, you become leverage, a target. Everyone who wants to hurt me will come for you first. Then we deal with it." Selina's voice was steadier than she felt. "Together." "Selina, I'm tired of being afraid, Roman. Tired of watching bad people win because good people follow rules that don't apply to them. You're offering something different. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe I'll regret it, but right now I'd rather be standing next to a monster who keeps his promises than alone in a world that's already failed everyone I've tried to protect. Roman studied her face like he was searching for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign she didn't understand what she was signing up for. He wouldn't find it, because Selena had already made her choice, had made it the moment she'd given him information about Ivy, had confirmed it every day since when she'd accepted his protection instead of running. This kiss was just making explicit what had been building between them since Roman first walked through her clinic door. "If we do this," Roman said slowly, "there's no going back. You'll be mine. And I protect what's mine with everything I have." "And what do I get in return?" "Everything." His hand tightened in her hair. "Every resource I control, every connection I've built, every weapon in my arsenal. All of it becomes yours the moment you're mine." The possessiveness should have repelled her. Instead, Selena felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Because Roman wasn't offering romance, wasn't promising moonlight and roses. He was offering partnership, power, the kind of security that came from standing beside someone so dangerous that the rest of the world thought twice before moving against you. "Then I'm yours," she whispered. Roman's eyes darkened. Then he kissed her again, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. This was claim and promise and warning all rolled into one. His hands mapped her body like he was memorizing coordinates. Selena's back hit the wall, and she didn't care that they were still in her clinic, that anyone could walk in, that this was reckless and dangerous and would complicate everything. She just held on and let herself fall. When they finally broke apart again, both breathing hard, Roman rested his hand against the wall beside her head. "Come home with me," he said. "My actual home. Not a safe house. Not some property I keep for convenience. I want you in my space." "Isn't that moving too fast?" "We're already past fast, Selena. We jumped straight to inevitable." He was right. Whatever this was between them had never been slow or careful. It had been a collision from the start. Two opposing forces crashing together and creating something neither of them could control. "Okay," Selena heard herself say. "Let's go." Roman's expression shifted. Satisfaction, relief, and something darker she couldn't quite identify. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together, and led her toward the door. They made it halfway across the parking lot before gunfire shattered the night. Roman shoved Selena behind a car as bullets tore through metal and glass. His security detail returned fire immediately, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness. Selena crouched with her hands over her ears while chaos exploded around them. "Stay down," Roman ordered. Then he was moving, pulling a weapon from somewhere beneath his jacket and advancing toward the shooters with terrifying calm. More gunfire erupted. Someone screamed, tires squealed, then silence. Roman returned 3 minutes later, his shirt splattered with blood that wasn't his, and pulled Selena to her feet. "We're leaving, now." "What just happened?" "Cassian happened." Roman's voice was lethal. "He just declared war." He dragged Selena toward an armored SUV while his security detail cleared the area. She glimpsed bodies on the ground, 2, maybe 3, and forced herself not to look too closely. They were in the vehicle and moving before Selena could process what had just happened. Roman made 3 phone calls in rapid succession, his voice cold and clipped, issuing orders that made the driver's hands tighten on the wheel. "Where are we going?" Selena finally asked. "Somewhere Cassian can't reach you." Roman turned to meet her eyes, and his expression was pure ice. "I was willing to let him live as long as he stayed away, but he just tried to kill you, in front of witnesses, on camera. That's not something I can let stand." "Roman, no." His hand found hers, grip almost painful. "You're mine now, Selena. That means anyone who tries to hurt you has to go through me first. And I promise you, Cassian Mercer is going to learn exactly what that costs." The SUV sped through Chicago's streets, while Roman made more calls. Selena caught fragments. "Find him. Lock it down. I want every asset in play." The cold efficiency with which he mobilized his empire should have terrified her. Instead, she felt safe. Because Roman Dragunov had just proven exactly what he'd promised. He protected what was his with everything he had. And now Selena belonged to him completely. There was no going back. Roman's real home wasn't what Selena expected. She'd anticipated ostentatious wealth, marble and gold, and the kind of aggressive luxury that screamed power. Instead, she found a penthouse that felt lived in, comfortable furniture, bookshelves, art that looked chosen for appreciation rather than investment. Human. "Welcome home," Roman said quietly as they entered. Selina turned to face him. Blood still stained his shirt. His expression was carved from stone, but his hand stayed gentle on her lower back, guiding her inside like she was something precious that might shatter. "We need to talk," she said. "Later." Roman's phone buzzed again. He checked it, jaw tightening. "I have work to do. Marcus will stay with you. Don't leave the penthouse." "What are you going to do?" What should have been done weeks ago. He cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Cassian crossed a line tonight. I'm going to make sure everyone in this city understands what happens when someone threatens you." "Roman, please don't." He kissed her hard, brief, claiming, "Trust me." Then he was gone, leaving Selina alone in his penthouse with Marcus standing discreetly by the door and the knowledge that somewhere in Chicago's darkness, Roman was about to unleash hell. She moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Lights sprawled below like scattered stars. Beautiful, brutal, indifferent. Her phone buzzed. Not the encrypted one. Her real phone, which she'd somehow kept clutched in her hand through the shooting. Unknown number. Selina almost didn't answer, but some instinct made her press the button. "Dr. Vale?" Cassian's voice slithered through the speaker. "I hope you're enjoying your last few hours of peace, because Roman Dragunov's protection won't save you much longer. I've made arrangements, and by tomorrow morning, you'll wish you'd never interfered in my marriage." The line went dead. Selina stood frozen, staring at her reflection in the darkened window. Her own eyes stared back, wide, terrified, recognizing too late that she'd underestimated Cassian's reach. He wasn't giving up. He was just getting started. And somewhere in the city, Roman was walking into whatever trap Cassian had prepared, believing his power was absolute enough to overcome anything. Selina's hand shook as she dialed Roman's encrypted line. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. "Marcus," her voice cracked. "Something's wrong. Cassian just called. He said he'd made arrangements. I think Roman's walking into—" Marcus was already on his phone, barking orders. But his expression told Selina everything she needed to know. They were too late. Whatever Cassian had planned was already in motion, and Roman, for all his power and violence and control, might have finally met an enemy who'd learned how to make him bleed. Marcus was already moving before Selina finished her sentence. His phone pressed to his ear, voice clipped and urgent as he barked coordinates and orders to people she couldn't see. But his face told her everything she needed to know. They were racing against a clock that had already run out. "Where is he?" Selina demanded. "Warehouse District, South Side." Marcus didn't look at her. He went to meet with Volkov. The name meant nothing to Selina, but the way Marcus said it, like invoking something poisonous, made her stomach drop. "Who's Volkov?" "Viktor Volkov. Runs the trafficking network that operates out of the docks." Marcus finally met her eyes, and she saw genuine fear there. Roman went to negotiate Ivy's debt. Cassian owed them money, used his wife as collateral. Roman was buying her freedom. Then why would Cassian— Selina stopped. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. "He didn't just owe them money. He told them about Roman and me." Marcus's expression confirmed it. Cassian hadn't been planning some elaborate revenge. He'd done something far simpler and infinitely more dangerous. He'd given the Volkov syndicate the one piece of information that could hurt Roman worse than bullets or legal threats. He told them Roman cared about someone. "We need to go," Selina said. "Now." "You're not going anywhere near—" "He's walking into a trap because of me." Selina's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm not staying here while he bleeds out in some warehouse because Cassian decided I was easier to hurt than Ivy." Marcus studied her for 3 seconds. Then he nodded once and grabbed his keys. They were in the SUV and moving before Selina could second-guess the decision. Chicago blurred past the windows. Lights and concrete and the sprawling indifference of a city that didn't care who lived or died in its shadows. Marcus drove like he was being chased, weaving through traffic with the kind of precision that came from years of emergency extractions. Selena's phone buzzed again. Cashin. She answered before Marcus could stop her. Enjoying the show, Dr. Vale? Cassian's voice dripped with satisfaction. I wanted you to know exactly what's happening. Right now, Roman's standing in front of Viktor Volkov, trying to negotiate like he still has leverage. But Volkov knows the truth now, knows that the great Roman Dragunov has a weakness, and weaknesses get exploited. You're a coward, Selena said quietly. You couldn't beat him, so you sold him out to people worse than you. Cassian laughed. I sold him out to people who understand what he is. A rabid dog pretending to be a king, and now they're going to put him down while you listen on the phone. If he dies, then you'll spend the rest of your very short life knowing it was your fault. Cassian's amusement vanished. You took my wife. You involved yourself in my marriage. You brought this on yourself, Doctor. Everything that happens tonight is because you couldn't mind your own business. The line went dead. Selena's hands shook. Marcus glanced at her, jaw tight. Don't listen to him. He's right, though, isn't he? Her voice came out hollow. Roman wouldn't be there if it wasn't for me. If I just walked away, then Ivy would be dead and Cassian would still be beating her. Marcus took a corner hard enough to throw Selena against the door. Roman makes his own choices. He knew the risks. He went anyway because that's who he is. They reached the warehouse district 15 minutes later. Marcus killed the lights before they got close, parking 3 blocks away in the shadow of an abandoned factory. He reached under his seat and pulled out 2 handguns. You know how to use one of these? Selena stared at the weapon. I'm a doctor. That wasn't the question. She took the gun with trembling hands. It was heavier than she'd expected. Cold, deadly. Everything she'd spent her life opposing now resting in her palm like judgment. Safety's here. Point and squeeze. Don't pull the trigger, squeeze it. Marcus checked his own weapon with practiced efficiency. Stay behind me. Don't do anything stupid, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Selena nodded. They moved through the darkness toward a massive warehouse that looked abandoned except for the 3 black SUVs parked outside. Marcus signaled for silence as they approached, using hand gestures Selena didn't understand but followed anyway. Voices carried through the broken windows overhead. Roman's voice. Cold. Controlled. But Selena heard the tension beneath it. The debt is cleared, he was saying. $500,000, cash. Ivy Mercer is no longer your concern. Another voice responded, older, amused, speaking with an accent Selena couldn't place. You misunderstand the situation, Dragunov. I don't want your money. I want what Cassian offered me. Which is? Information about the doctor who's made you soft. Silence. Then Roman's voice again, quieter now, more dangerous. If you even speak her name, I'll burn your entire organization to the ground. The older man laughed. There it is, confirmation. Cassian was right. The great Roman Dragunov has fallen for some bleeding heart doctor who probably doesn't even realize what you are. How delightfully human. Marcus pulled Selena behind a stack of rusted equipment. Through the gaps, she could see inside the warehouse. Roman stood in the center of a pool of light, surrounded by at least a dozen armed men. Across from him, an older man in expensive clothes sat in a chair like it was a throne, Viktor Volkov. He looked like someone's grandfather, silver hair, tailored suit, warm smile that never touched his eyes, the kind of monster who'd perfected the art of looking harmless while orchestrating horrors. So here's what's going to happen, Volkov continued. You're going to tell me everything about this doctor, where she lives, where she works, who matters to her. And then my people are going to pay her a visit. Nothing fatal, just enough to remind you that caring about people makes you vulnerable. Roman's expression never changed, but every man in the warehouse felt the temperature drop. You have 5 seconds to apologize, Roman said softly. After that, I start killing your people, starting with you. Volkov smiled wider. You're outnumbered 12-1, Dragunov. Your security detail is outside. My men are inside. You're alone, powerless, and very much about to learn what happens when pride overrides survival instinct. 4 seconds. Shoot him, Volkov said casually. 3 men raised their weapons. Roman moved. Selena had seen violence before. Gunshot wounds, stab victims, the aftermath of brutality in all its forms. But she'd never witnessed someone weaponize themselves the way Roman did in that moment. He crossed the distance to the nearest gunman in 2 strides, broke the man's wrist with one brutal motion, and used his body as a shield while firing the stolen weapon at 2 more attackers. They went down before they could pull their triggers. Roman dropped the human shield and moved again, flowing through the space like water finding cracks, each motion efficient and lethal. Gunfire erupted. Bullets chewed through concrete and metal. Marcus was already moving, pulling Selina toward better cover while firing at the warehouse entrance. More of Volkov's men appeared from the shadows, and suddenly the building had become a war zone. Selina crouched behind rusted machinery with her unused gun clutched in both hands. She should have been terrified. Should have been frozen with fear. Instead, she watched Roman move through violence like choreography he'd perfected over decades, and felt something cold and certain settle in her chest. This was who he really was. Not the controlled businessman in expensive suits, not the crime lord playing at civility. This was Roman stripped to his essence, a predator so completely adapted to killing that it looked like art. And Selina realized with sickening clarity that she'd fallen in love with a monster. Another gunman went down. Then another. Roman was bleeding now. She could see dark stains spreading across his shirt. But he didn't slow, didn't stop, just kept moving with mechanical precision until he'd carved a path straight to Viktor Volkov. The older man had stopped smiling. Roman grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against a concrete pillar hard enough to crack bone. "I gave you 5 seconds to apologize. You chose this." "Wait," Volkov choked out. "Too late." Roman's other hand moved. Selina looked away before she saw what he did, but she heard Volkov's scream echoing through the warehouse. High, terrified, the sound of someone realizing too late that they'd miscalculated badly. Then silence. Roman dropped Volkov's body and turned. His eyes found Selina through the chaos, and for just a moment she saw him clearly. Not the man who'd kissed her in her clinic, not the protector who'd kept her safe. Just a killer covered in blood, breathing hard, looking at her like she was the only thing tethering him to humanity. "Selina." Her name sounded wrong in his mouth, desperate. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you." She stood on shaking legs. "You came here because of me. Because Cassian's dead." The statement hung in the air like smoke. Selina stared at Roman. "What?" "I killed him 3 hours ago." Roman's voice was flat, empty. "Before I came here. Found him at his father's estate. Made sure he understood exactly what happened when people threaten what's mine. Then I made sure he'd never threaten anyone again." The warehouse spun. Selina grabbed the rusted equipment to steady herself. "You killed him. Before the shooting at my clinic. Before any of this." "The shooting was Volkov's people, not Cassian's. He'd already made the deal before I got to him. Told Volkov everything about you, about us. Set this whole thing in motion." Roman moved closer, and Selina saw the full extent of his injuries. Bullet wounds, deep cuts, blood loss that should have dropped him already. "I was walking into this knowing it was a trap. But I had to come anyway. Had to make sure Volkov understood what happens when people use you against me." "You almost died." "Probably." Roman stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Selina could see his pupils blown wide with adrenaline and pain. "But you're safe. That's all that matters." Sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus appeared from the shadows, moving quickly. "We need to leave. Now. Chicago PD is 2 minutes out." Roman didn't move, just kept staring at Selina like she was the only real thing in the warehouse full of bodies and blood. "Come with me," he said quietly. "Where?" "Anywhere that isn't here." Marcus was already clearing a path toward the back exit. Roman extended his hand, and Selina realized this was the choice. The real one. Everything before had been prologue. Now she stood in a warehouse full of dead men while the monster she'd fallen for asked her to run with him into whatever came next. She took his hand. They moved through the darkness together while sirens grew louder and Chicago's emergency services descended on the carnage. Marcus had vehicles waiting 3 blocks away. They were inside and moving before the first patrol car arrived. Roman leaned against the window, breathing shallow, blood seeping through his shirt at an alarming rate. "Hospital," Selina said firmly. "No hospitals." "You're bleeding out." "I have a private doctor. Marcus knows where." Roman's eyes closed. Just stay with me. Selina pressed her hands against his worst wound, trying to slow the bleeding. Her medical training kicked in automatically. Assess, prioritize, stabilize. But her hand shook, and she realized with terrible clarity that this was different from treating patients in her clinic. This was Roman, and she couldn't lose him. "You're not allowed to die," she said. Roman's mouth curved slightly. "Wasn't planning on it." "Good. Because I just became complicit in multiple murders, and I'd like you alive to make it worthwhile." He laughed, then winced, the motion pulling at his injuries. "You're handling this better than I expected." "I'm in shock. Ask me again tomorrow when it sets in." Selina kept pressure on the wound. "Why did you really go to that warehouse, Roman? You knew it was a trap. You knew Cassian had already told them everything. Because Volkov needed to understand that using you against me wasn't strategy. It was suicide." Roman's eyes opened, focusing on her with frightening intensity. "I had to make sure everyone in this city knows what happens when they even think about hurting you. Had to draw the line in blood so they'd never forget." "That's insane." "That's love." The word landed between them like a grenade. Selina's hand stilled. "What?" "I'm in love with you, Selina." Roman's voice was matter-of-fact despite the blood loss. "Have been since I saw you standing between Ivy and her abuser with nothing but rage and a phone. That's not rational. That's not smart. But it's true. And everything I've done since then has been about keeping you alive and close and mine." Selina couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stared at him while her entire world tilted sideways. "You don't know me," she managed. "I know enough." "You barely... I know you stayed 2 hours past closing 3 nights last week to treat a kid with pneumonia whose parents couldn't pay. I know you cry in your car after losing patience, but never where anyone can see. I know you drink black coffee and never eat breakfast and work yourself into exhaustion because you think saving people will somehow make up for the mother you couldn't save." Roman's expression softened fractionally. "I know you better than you want me to, and I love you anyway." The SUV swerved around a corner. Marcus was on his phone coordinating their extraction while simultaneously navigating through back streets. But Selina barely noticed. She was too busy staring at Roman and realizing he was right. She loved him too. Loved this violent, damaged man who'd burned his entire empire to keep her safe. Who'd walked into certain death because someone had threatened her. Who looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. "This is fucked up," she whispered. "Completely. We're terrible for each other. Probably. Normal people don't fall in love over corpses and gunfire." Roman's smile was tired but genuine. "Good thing we're not normal people." They reached the private clinic Marcus had been navigating toward. It was tucked in a neighborhood Selina didn't recognize, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and didn't report gunshot wounds. A doctor met them at the entrance, took one look at Roman, and started barking orders. Selina helped get him inside into a sterile room that looked more like someone's basement converted into a surgical suite than a proper clinic. The doctor worked quickly, cutting away Roman's ruined shirt and assessing the damage with practiced efficiency. 3 bullets, 1 through and through, 2 still lodged, multiple lacerations, severe blood loss. The doctor looked at Selina. "You're a doctor?" "Yes." "Then scrub in. I need another pair of hands." The next 3 hours blurred into surgery. Selina fell into the familiar rhythm of medical work. Retract, suture, irrigate, close. The doctor asked no questions about how Roman had acquired his injuries, just worked with the same focused calm Selina recognized from her own ER days. They stabilized him eventually. Got the bullets out, closed the worst of the wounds, set him up with IV antibiotics and fluids for the blood loss. "He'll live," the doctor said finally, stripping off bloody gloves. "But he needs rest. Real rest. Not the kind where he's back on his feet in 12 hours doing more damage." "I'll make sure," Selina promised. The doctor nodded and disappeared into another room, leaving Selina alone with Roman's unconscious form. She sat in a chair beside the surgical table and let herself shake. Everything that had happened tonight crashed over her in waves. The shooting at her clinic, the call from Cassian, the warehouse full of bodies, Roman's confession, the surgery, all of it piling up until she couldn't distinguish one trauma from another. She'd helped kill people tonight, not directly, but she'd been there, had watched Roman carve through Volkov's men without intervening. had made the conscious choice to stay with him instead of calling the police or running or doing any of the things a sane person would have done. She was complicit now, and the worst part was that she didn't feel as guilty as she should. Roman stirred around Dawn. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her with obvious effort. "You stayed," he said. "Where else would I go?" "Away from me. Back to your life. Anywhere that isn't covered in my blood." Selina reached for his hand. "I'm exactly where I want to be." Roman's fingers tightened around hers. "This isn't over, Selina. Volkov had connections, associates, people who want revenge for what happened tonight. Then we deal with them." "We? You think I'm leaving now, after everything?" Selina leaned closer. "You said you loved me. I didn't get a chance to respond before you passed out. So I'm telling you now, I love you too. It's insane and destructive and probably going to ruin both our lives. But it's true." Roman stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. Then his free hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You're going to regret this," he said softly. "Probably. But not today." They stayed like that for a long time, hands linked, breathing synchronized, existing in the quiet space between violence and whatever came next. The doctor returned around noon with food neither of them wanted. Marcus appeared shortly after with updates. Selina only half heard. Something about police investigations and cleaning crews and witness statements that would lead nowhere. Roman's empire moved in the background, handling the aftermath while he recovered. By evening, he could sit up without passing out. The doctor cleared him to move with strict instructions about rest and wound care. Marcus had arranged a secure location, another property Selina had never seen, this one further from the city center. They arrived after dark. Roman leaned heavily on Selina as they moved inside, his injuries making every step difficult despite his attempts to hide it. The house was smaller than his penthouse, more isolated, surrounded by trees that blocked any view from the road. Safe. Selina got Roman settled on the couch while Marcus did a security sweep. Then they were alone for the first time since the warehouse. "I need to tell you something," Roman said quietly. "If it's more confessions about loving me, I already know." "It's about Ivy." Selina went still. "What about her?" Roman's expression was carefully neutral. "The debt I paid to Volkov. The $500,000. It wasn't just to clear Ivy's name from Cassian's gambling." "Then what was it for?" "Cassian didn't just owe them money, he owed them a person." Roman met her eyes directly. He'd promised them Ivy. As payment, she was going to be trafficked, disappeared, sold to someone overseas who collects women like property. The words hit Selina like physical blows. He was going to let them take her? He'd already signed the paperwork, made the arrangements. The only reason they didn't grab her weeks ago was because she was still useful to him. But once the divorce went through, once she was no longer legally his wife, she became cargo. Selina's vision swam. She thought about Ivy sitting in that expensive apartment, believing she was safe. Believing Cassian's reach had ended, never knowing how close she'd come to a fate worse than anything he'd already done to her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because there was nothing you could do. And because I handled it." Roman's jaw tightened. "That's why I went to Volkov, not just to negotiate, but to make absolutely certain that every piece of paperwork linking Ivy to that organization disappeared, to make sure they understood she was under my protection now, that touching her would be suicide. But Cassian told them about me instead. He told them about you because he knew I'd come, knew I'd trade myself to protect you. He thought it would save his life." Roman's expression went cold. He was wrong. Selina sat down heavily. Everything she thought she'd understood about the last week rearranged itself. Roman hadn't just been protecting Ivy from an abusive husband. He'd been extracting her from a trafficking network, had paid $500,000 to erase her existence from their records, had walked into a trap knowing it would probably kill him because the alternative was leaving Ivy vulnerable. "You're a good man," Selina said quietly. Roman laughed. It sounded broken. "I've killed 17 people in the last 72 hours, Selina. Good men don't have body counts. Good men protect people who can't protect themselves. That's exactly what you did. I also fell in love with someone I have no right to touch, someone who deserves better than a monster playing at civilization." Selina moved to sit beside him on the couch, careful of his injuries. "Maybe I don't want better. Maybe I want you." exactly as you are. Roman looked at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her, gentle, despite the violence still coating his skin like a second layer. Selina kissed him back and tasted copper and exhaustion and something that felt uncomfortably like forever. When they broke apart, Roman rested his forehead against hers. "This is the point where I should tell you to run," he murmured, "before you're in too deep to escape." "I'm already in too deep." "I know. That's what terrifies me." They sat together while darkness gathered outside and Chicago moved on without them. Somewhere in the city, police were investigating a massacre at a warehouse. Journalists were writing stories about gang violence and organized crime. Politicians were giving speeches about law and order. And here, in this isolated house surrounded by trees, Selina held a man covered in bandages and blood and realized she'd never felt safer. Her phone buzzed. The encrypted one Roman had given her. She answered without checking the number. "Hello?" "Dr. Vale." A woman's voice. Unfamiliar, cold. "My name is Katerina Volkov. You killed my father tonight." Selina's blood turned to ice. "I didn't—" "You were there, with Dragunov. I have witnesses, security footage, evidence that you're complicit in everything that happened." Katerina's voice was precise, controlled. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Roman Dragunov. You're going to disappear. And if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone you've ever helped suffers for it. Every patient, every person you saved. I'll find them all and make you watch them die." The line went dead. Selina sat frozen, phone clutched in her hand while her entire world collapsed. Roman noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Viktor Volkov had a daughter." Selina's voice came out hollow. "She just called me. Threatened everyone I've ever treated if I don't leave you." Roman's expression went absolutely cold. The kind of cold that preceded violence. "Give me the phone." Roman kicked. "Give me the phone." Selina handed it over. Roman checked the call log, his jaw working. Then he made a call of his own, voice clipped and lethal, as he issued orders to people she couldn't see. When he hung up, his eyes were ice. Katerina Volkov runs the European arm of her father's organization. She's worse than he was, more ruthless, more patient, and she just declared war. Roman looked at Selina with an expression that mixed rage and something close to despair. "I can't protect everyone you've ever treated. There are too many, spread across too many years. She'll pick them off one by one until you break." "Then what do I do?" "You make a choice." Roman's voice was gentle despite the words. "Me or them. Your life with me or the lives of everyone you've saved." Selina felt something inside her crack. This was the real cost. Not the violence, not the complicity, but this impossible choice between the man she loved and the oath she'd taken to do no harm. "There has to be another way," she whispered. "There isn't. Katerina won't stop until she's satisfied. And she won't be satisfied until you're destroyed." Roman reached for her hand. "So you need to decide, right now. Because every second you wait is another second she's hunting people whose only crime was trusting you to help them." Selina closed her eyes, thought about all the patients she'd treated over 8 years. The gunshot victims, the overdoses, the women fleeing abuse, hundreds of people who'd walked through her clinic doors and trusted her with their lives. She couldn't let them die because she'd fallen in love with a monster. But she also couldn't walk away from Roman. Not now. Not when she'd finally found someone who looked at her broken edges and called them beautiful. "I need time," she said. "You don't have time." "Then make time. Do whatever you do. Use your connections. Find a way." Selina opened her eyes and met his gaze directly. "Because I'm not choosing. I'm not giving up you or them. We're going to find a third option." "Selina, do you love me?" "Yes." "Then help me save them." Roman stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, resignation giving way to determination. "This is going to cost everything," he said quietly. "Every favor I've accumulated, every connection I've built, every piece of leverage I control. If we do this, I'll have nothing left. Then we'll have each other and nothing. That's enough." Roman's hand tightened around hers. "You're going to be the death of me." "Not today." He pulled her against him despite his injuries, holding her with the desperate intensity of someone watching their empire crumble and choosing it anyway. And somewhere in Chicago's darkness, Katerina Volkov smiled and began hunting the people Selina Vale had spent 8 years trying to save. Roman made 7 phone calls in the first hour, each one clipped, precise, trading favors he'd accumulated over decades for information about Katerina Volkov's current location and operational structure. Selina sat beside him on the couch, watching him dismantle his empire piece by piece to keep strangers alive, and felt something twist in her chest that was equal parts love and guilt. "She's in Chicago," Roman said after the 7th call ended, "staying at the Meridian Hotel under an alias. Came in yesterday with 12 security personnel and a tactical team. She's not hiding." "Because she wants us to know where she is," Selina said. "Exactly. She's baiting us, hoping I'll do something reckless that exposes my position." Roman set down his phone with careful precision. "But we're not playing her game. We're changing the rules." "How?" "By giving her what she actually wants." Selina's stomach dropped. "Which is?" "Me." Roman's expression was carved from ice. "Katerina doesn't care about you or your patients. She cares about revenge. Her father died because of me. She wants blood. So I'm going to offer myself in exchange for a guarantee that everyone connected to you stays untouched." "Absolutely not. It's the only option that—" "I said no." Selina's voice came out harder than she'd intended. "I'm not letting you trade your life for mine. That's not a solution. That's suicide. It's tactical sacrifice. There's a difference." "Not to me, there isn't." Roman studied her with those cold, assessing eyes. "Then what do you suggest? Because we're running out of time." "Katerina's people are already mobilizing. I have reports of surveillance on your clinic, your apartment, the women's shelter where Ivy's been volunteering. She's mapping your entire life so she knows exactly where to strike." Selina's hands clenched. Every patient she'd ever treated flashed through her mind. Faces, names, stories. The kid with pneumonia whose parents couldn't afford antibiotics. The woman who'd survived domestic violence and now ran a support group. The elderly man she visited weekly to manage his diabetes. Hundreds of people whose only crime was trusting her to help them. And now they were targets because she'd fallen in love with the wrong man. "We kill her first," Selina heard herself say. Roman went very still. "What?" "You heard me. We find Katerina Volkov and we kill her before she can hurt anyone." Selina met his eyes directly. "You said it yourself. She won't stop until she's satisfied, so we don't give her the chance. We end this permanently." "That's not who you are." "Maybe it's who I need to become." Selina's voice didn't shake. "I've spent 8 years trying to save people through proper channels. Through medicine and compassion and believing the system would eventually work. But the system failed Ivy. Failed my mother. Failed every person who walked into my clinic with injuries they were too afraid to report. Maybe it's time I tried your way." Roman was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Once you cross this line, Selina, there's no going back. You can't unknow what it feels like to watch someone die by your hand. Can't undo the weight that settles into your bones afterward. I've carried it for 20 years. I don't want that for you. And I don't want strangers dying because Katerina decided I'm easier to hurt than you." Selina reached for his hand. "So teach me. Show me how to be the monster this situation needs." "You're not a monster. Neither were you, once, before violence became the only language you spoke." She squeezed his fingers. "If I'm going to lose my soul doing this, at least let me lose it protecting the people I've sworn to help." Roman stared at her like she'd become something he didn't recognize. Then he pulled out his phone and made another call. "Marcus, I need everything you have on Katerina's security detail. Floor plans of the Meridian, guard rotations, blind spots in their surveillance, and I need it in the next 3 hours." He paused. "Because we're going hunting." He disconnected and turned back to Selina. "You're sure about this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Roman's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Then let's make sure you survive it." Marcus arrived 2 hours later with blueprints, photographs, and enough tactical information to plan a military strike. He spread everything across the dining table while Selina studied the layout with the same focus she brought to surgical procedures. The Meridian Hotel occupied 43 floors in downtown Chicago. Katerina had reserved the entire penthouse level. 12 suites converted into a fortified command center. Her security detail consisted of former military contractors, professional, disciplined, the kind of people who'd kill without hesitation. She's expecting an attack, Marcus said, pointing to the guard rotations. They're running overlapping shifts. No gaps longer than 90 seconds. Every entrance monitored, stairwells locked down. She's turned that penthouse into a fortress. Then we don't go through the entrances, Roman said quietly. We go through the walls. Selina looked up from the blueprints. What? The Meridian shares a ventilation system with the adjacent building, corporate offices, closed at night. We go in through there, access the shared ductwork, and come up through the penthouse's infrastructure. Roman traced the route with his finger. It bypasses all their security, puts us inside their perimeter before they know we're there. That's insane, Marcus said. That's why it'll work. Roman glanced at Selina. But it means close quarters, limited visibility, no backup if something goes wrong. Are you certain you want to do this? Selina thought about the elderly man with diabetes, the single mother fleeing abuse, the teenager she'd treated last week for a stab wound he'd gotten protecting his sister. All of them going about their lives, completely unaware that a woman overseas had marked them for death. I'm certain, she said. Roman nodded once. Then he started explaining the plan in detail. Entry points, timing, contingencies. Selina absorbed it all with the same intensity she'd learned anatomy in medical school. This was just another system to understand, another problem to solve. The fact that solving it required killing someone didn't change the methodology. That thought should have terrified her. It didn't. Marcus left around midnight with instructions to stage extraction vehicles and prepare their route out of the city. Roman spent another hour going over the plan until Selina could recite every step without thinking. You'll need this, he said finally, handing her a compact handgun, smaller than the one Marcus had given her at the warehouse, designed for concealment rather than firepower. Selina took it with steady hands. Will one gun be enough? For what we're doing? Yes. This isn't a firefight. It's an assassination. Roman met her eyes. We go in quiet. Find Katerina. Put 2 bullets in her head before her security realizes we're there. Then we leave the same way we came. Clean, simple. Over in 5 minutes. And if it's not clean, then we improvise. Roman's expression was unreadable. But Selina, if something goes wrong, if we get separated or cornered, you leave me behind. You get out and you don't look back. Understood? That's not happening. It might have to. Katerina wants me alive so she can make me suffer. That gives me negotiating room you don't have. If it comes down to a choice between my capture and your death, you choose your life. Promise me. Selina wanted to argue, wanted to insist they'd both make it out, or neither would. But she'd spent enough time in trauma medicine to know that plans rarely survived first contact with reality. Sometimes you had to triage, had to choose who lived and who didn't. I promise, she lied. Roman studied her face long enough that she thought he'd call her on it. Then he nodded and pulled her against him, mindful of his still healing injuries. I love you, he said quietly. Whatever happens tonight, I need you to know that. This isn't obligation or protection or guilt. It's love, the kind that doesn't make sense and probably shouldn't exist. But it does. Selina pressed her face against his chest and breathed him in. Expensive cologne mixed with antiseptic and something uniquely him. I love you too, even though you're about to turn me into a killer. You were always capable of this. I'm just giving you permission. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet darkness, while Chicago hummed beyond the windows. Then Roman pulled back and checked his watch. We move in 4 hours. Try to rest. Selina didn't sleep. Just lay on the couch with her eyes closed while her mind ran through the plan over and over, memorizing every detail. The gun sat on the coffee table within reach, cold, heavy, waiting. At 4 a.m., Roman woke her with coffee and tactical gear. Black clothes that would disappear into shadows, Kevlar vest that felt wrong against her skin, equipment belt with extra ammunition and a knife she hoped she wouldn't need to use. You look terrified, Roman observed. I am terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He adjusted her vest, checking the fit. Channel it. Use it. Don't let it paralyze you. Selina nodded and finished her coffee. It tasted like copper. Or maybe that was just her imagination preparing her for the blood that would come later. Marcus arrived at 4:30 with the extraction vehicle, a nondescript van that could blend into early morning delivery traffic. They loaded equipment in silence. No one spoke during the drive downtown. What was there to say? They were about to commit murder. Premeditated. Calculated. The kind of crime that destroyed lives and careers and any claim to moral high ground. But Selena thought about her patients and didn't care. They parked 3 blocks from the Target building. The corporate offices Marcus had identified stood dark and empty in the pre-dawn cold. Roman picked the lock in under 30 seconds, and they were inside moving through abandoned cubicles toward the service corridors. The ventilation access was exactly where the blueprints indicated. Roman removed the grate with practiced efficiency and gestured for Selena to enter first. "Stay close. Don't make noise. If you see lights ahead, stop immediately." Selena nodded and crawled into the ductwork. The space was tighter than she'd expected, barely wide enough for her shoulders. Metal pressed against her back and stomach as she inched forward through absolute darkness. Behind her, she heard Roman's controlled breathing as he followed. They moved in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. The ductwork branched and twisted through the building's infrastructure like veins. Selena followed Roman's whispered directions, trusting him to navigate when she couldn't see anything beyond her outstretched hands. Then light appeared ahead. Faint, filtering up through a grate below them. Roman's hand touched her ankle, the signal to stop. She froze, barely breathing, as voices drifted up from the room beneath. "Checking in. All clear on the west corridor. Copy. Maintain position. Security personnel, right below them." Roman moved forward until he was beside Selena in the narrow space, his mouth pressed against her ear. 2 guards, directly under the grate. "We wait until they move." Selena nodded. They lay in the darkness, listening to the guards discuss shift rotations and coffee preferences with the casual boredom of people who didn't expect trouble. Minutes crawled past. Finally, footsteps. The guards moving away toward another part of the penthouse. Roman removed the grate with agonizing slowness. No sound. No scrape of metal on metal. Then he dropped through the opening in one fluid motion, landing in a crouch with his weapon drawn. Nothing. He gestured for Selena to follow. She dropped into a luxury suite that had been converted into a tactical operations center. Computer equipment lined the walls. Maps of Chicago covered every surface. Photographs of people Selena recognized from her clinic stared back at her from a massive bulletin board. Katerina had been thorough. Every patient Selena had treated in the last 6 months was documented. Names, addresses, daily routines, vulnerabilities. The elderly man with diabetes, the single mother, the teenager with the stab wound, all of them mapped and marked like targets at a shooting range. Rage flooded through Selena with such force that her vision blurred. Roman noticed. His hand found her shoulder, squeezing once. Focus. They moved through the suite toward the interior door. Roman checked the corridor beyond. Empty. And they slipped into the penthouse's main living area. More luxury. More evidence of Katerina's planning. And in the center of it all, sitting at a dining table with a glass of wine, was the woman herself. Katerina Volkov looked nothing like her father. Where Victor had been all false warmth and grandfather charm, his daughter was cold precision. Early 30s, blonde hair pulled back severely, designer clothes that probably cost more than Selena's car. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom, not running a trafficking empire. She smiled when she saw them. Roman Dragunov, right on schedule. Katerina set down her wine glass with deliberate care. I was beginning to worry you'd do something unpredictable, but no. You walked straight into exactly the trap I prepared. Red dots appeared on Roman's chest. Laser sights. At least 6 of them. Selena's stomach dropped as armed men emerged from the shadows around them. They'd been waiting. Hidden. Katerina hadn't been sitting here alone. She'd been bait. And they'd taken it. Drop your weapons, Katerina said pleasantly, or my people will drop you. Your choice. Roman's jaw tightened, but he set his gun on the floor and raised his hands. Selena did the same, her mind racing through options that didn't exist. They were surrounded, outgunned, completely fucked. Katerina stood and walked toward them with the casual grace of someone who'd already won. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate this? That I'd just sit here waiting for you to crawl through my ventilation system like vermin?" She laughed. "I've been planning this for weeks. Every move you'd make, every choice you'd be forced into. And you followed the script perfectly." "What do you want?" Roman's voice was flat. "What I've always wanted. You suffering." Katerina stopped 3 feet away. "My father died because of you, because you decided some doctor's feelings were more important than business arrangements. So now you're going to watch while I dismantle everything you've built, starting with her." She gestured toward Selena. 2 guards grabbed her arms. Selena struggled, but they were trained professionals, and she was a doctor who spent her days in a clinic. They forced her to her knees while Roman watched with murder in his eyes. "Don't," he said quietly. "Please, take me. Do whatever you want, but leave her alive." "Oh, I'm not going to kill her." Katerina smiled wider. "That would be too easy, too quick. No, I'm going to make her watch while I destroy every person she's ever helped, one by one, slowly. And when she's broken completely, when she understands what it means to love something you can't protect, then I'll kill her. And you'll spend whatever time you have left knowing you failed to save the one person who mattered." Roman's expression never changed, but Selena saw his eyes flick toward a guard standing near the window, then toward a gun that had been set on a nearby table. Calculating. Planning. Katerina noticed too. "Don't even think about it. You're injured, outnumbered. Even you can't fight your way out of this." "No," Roman agreed, "but I can buy time." He moved, faster than someone with his injuries should have been able to. He grabbed the nearest guard's weapon, drove his elbow into the man's throat, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Glass shattered. One of the guards went down. The laser sights tracking Roman scattered as everyone moved at once. Chaos erupted. Gunfire thundered through the penthouse. Selena threw herself flat as bullets chewed through luxury furniture around her. The guards holding her arms released her to grab their weapons. She scrambled toward the gun she'd dropped earlier, fingers closing around cold metal just as someone grabbed her hair and yanked her backward. Katerina's face filled her vision. "You're not going anywhere." Selena drove the gun backward into Katerina's stomach and fired. The sound was deafening in close quarters. Katerina's eyes went wide. She staggered back, hand pressed to her abdomen, where blood was already spreading across her expensive blouse. "You bitch!" Katerina gasped. Selena fired again. This time, Katerina went down. The world seemed to slow. Selena watched the most dangerous woman in Chicago collapse onto imported marble, while her security detail shouted and more gunfire exploded overhead. Roman was still moving through the chaos, taking down guards with surgical precision despite blood seeping through his bandages from reopened wounds. Someone grabbed Selena from behind. She twisted, drove her elbow back the way Roman had shown her, felt something crack. The guard's grip loosened. She spun and fired point blank into his chest. He dropped. Selena stared at the body, at the blood spreading across white marble, at her own hands holding a smoking gun. She'd just killed someone. Not in self-defense during a chaotic fight. Not by accident. She'd aimed, squeezed the trigger, watched him die, and felt absolutely nothing. "Selena!" Roman's voice cut through her shock. "Move!" She looked up. Half the guards were down. The rest were regrouping near the entrance. Roman was bleeding from at least 3 new wounds, but he was still standing, still fighting. Selena ran to him. Together they moved toward the window where Roman had been calculating earlier. He fired covering shots while Selena grabbed a chair and swung it into the glass with all her strength. It shattered. Cold wind rushed in from 40 stories above Chicago. "Are you insane?" Selena shouted over the noise. "Marcus!" Roman yelled into his phone. "West Side, now!" A helicopter rose into view beyond the broken window. Not a sleek corporate model. This was utility, industrial, the kind used for construction work on tall buildings. Marcus sat in the pilot's seat, bringing the aircraft level with the penthouse. "Jump," Roman ordered. "That's a 15-foot gap." "Then jump far." More gunfire erupted behind them. Bullets punched through the walls. Roman grabbed Selena's hand and they ran toward the window together. At the last second, he pushed her ahead. Selena jumped. For 3 heartbeats, she was airborne. Suspended over empty space with nothing but wind and gravity and the certainty that she was about to die. Then her hands caught the helicopter's landing skid. She hauled herself up with strength she didn't know she possessed, adrenaline overriding every survival instinct, screaming that this was impossible. Roman jumped a second later. He caught the skid with one hand, his injured body swinging wildly. Selina grabbed his wrist and pulled while Marcus fought to keep the helicopter stable. For one terrible moment, Roman's blood-slicked hand started slipping from her grip. "Don't you dare," Selina snarled. "I didn't become a killer for you to die now." Roman's other hand found purchase. Together they hauled him into the helicopter just as gunfire tore through the space where he'd been hanging seconds before. Marcus banked hard, pulling away from the building while more shots ricocheted off the helicopter's underside. But they were already out of effective range, rising into the pre-dawn sky above Chicago. Selina collapsed against the helicopter's interior, gasping. Roman lay beside her, bleeding from multiple wounds, breathing shallow. "You're a terrible influence," she told him. Roman laughed. It came out wet and painful. "You just killed 3 people and jumped out of a building. I'd say you're doing fine." Selina looked at her hands. They were covered in blood. Some of it was Roman's. Some was from the guard she'd shot. She'd just committed murder. Multiple counts, premeditated, in front of witnesses. There was no coming back from this, no returning to her clinic and her patients and her normal life. She was a fugitive now, a killer. Everything she'd fought against for 8 years, and the worst part was that she didn't regret it. "Katerina's dead," Selina said quietly. "I know, I saw." Roman reached for her hand with his blood-slicked fingers. "How do you feel?" "Empty. Numb. Like someone carved out everything human and replaced it with static. That's normal. It'll pass. Or it won't. Either way, you learn to live with it." The helicopter banked toward the outskirts of the city. Below them, Chicago woke up to another morning. People going to work. Living their lives. Completely unaware that 3 blocks from the financial district, a penthouse was full of corpses and bullet holes. "Where are we going?" Selina asked. "Out of the city. Then out of the state. Eventually out of the country if we need to." Roman's voice was getting weaker. "Katerina's people will want revenge. Her associates will come looking. We need to disappear until things settle." "And my patients?" "Safe. With Katerina dead, the threat dies with her. Her organization will fracture, scramble for power. They won't waste resources hunting strangers when they're too busy fighting each other." Roman coughed, and blood flecked his lips. "You saved them, Selina, by doing what needed to be done." Selina looked out at the city, shrinking below them. Somewhere down there, Ivy was probably waking up in her safe apartment. The elderly man with diabetes was taking his morning medication. The single mother was making breakfast for her kids. All of them alive because Selina had crossed a line she'd sworn never to approach. "I killed people," she said. "Yes. I'm a doctor. I took an oath to do no harm. You took an oath to save lives. Sometimes that requires harm." Roman squeezed her hand weakly. "You can hate yourself for it later. Right now, focus on staying alive." Marcus landed the helicopter in an empty field 20 miles outside the city. Another vehicle waited there. SUV with darkened windows and plates that probably wouldn't trace back to anything real. They transferred Roman inside while he drifted in and out of consciousness, blood loss finally catching up to the adrenaline that had kept him moving. "Hospital," Selina said. "Now." "Can't risk it. They'll be watching." Marcus pulled out a first aid kit. "You'll have to stabilize him here." Selina worked with shaking hands, applying pressure bandages and IV fluids, while Marcus drove toward a safe house he wouldn't name. This was beyond her capabilities. Roman needed surgery, proper medical equipment, a trauma team, but they were fugitives now. There were no hospitals for people like them. She did what she could with limited supplies, praying it would be enough. Roman's pulse was thready, his breathing shallow. He'd lost too much blood at the penthouse, reopened every wound from the warehouse, pushed his body past any reasonable limit. "Stay with me," Selina whispered, pressing her hand against his chest. "Please. I didn't kill 3 people just to watch you die in a car." Roman's eyes fluttered open. 3? I thought it was 2. Katerina makes 3. Then you're keeping better count than I am. His hand found hers. "We made it out. That's what matters." "We made it out, and now you're dying. Maybe. Maybe not. I'm harder to kill than I look." The SUV pulled into a driveway Selina didn't recognize. Marcus was already moving, opening the garage door and pulling them inside. Another doctor waited there, the same one from before, looking unsurprised by the blood and chaos. "Third time this month," the doctor observed. "You're developing a pattern." "Just fix him," Selina said. They got Roman inside, onto a surgical table in what looked like a converted basement. The doctor worked quickly, assessing the damage with clinical efficiency, while Selina assisted on autopilot. "He'll live," the doctor said finally, "but he needs rest. Real rest this time. Not the kind where he's back on his feet in 12 hours starting another war." "I'll make sure," Selina promised. The doctor nodded and disappeared upstairs, leaving Selina alone with Roman's unconscious form. She cleaned the blood from his skin with gentle hands, cataloging every wound, every scar, every mark that violence had left on him. This was who they were now: killers, fugitives, people who jumped out of buildings and disappeared into safe houses while the world moved on without them. Selina should have felt horror at what she'd become. Instead, she just felt tired. Her phone buzzed, the encrypted one that somehow still worked despite everything. Unknown number. She answered warily. "Hello? Dr. Vale?" A man's voice, accented, unfamiliar. "My name is Dmitri. I worked for Viktor Volkov, and I want you to know that what you did tonight won't be forgotten. Katerina had family, associates, people who'll spend years hunting you, but I'm calling to tell you something they won't." "What?" "Thank you." The man's voice softened. Katerina was worse than her father, more brutal, more willing to hurt innocents. With her gone, maybe some of us can find a way out, build something better, or at least something less monstrous. He paused. "You and Dragunov did the world a favor, even if the world will never know it." The line went dead. Selina sat in the dim basement, holding her encrypted phone, and realized that everything she thought she knew about good and evil had shattered completely. She'd killed 3 people tonight, and someone was thanking her for it. The world didn't make sense anymore. Maybe it never had. Roman stirred on the table, his hand searching blindly until it found hers. "Selina," he murmured without opening his eyes. "I'm here. Are you okay?" The question was so absurd given their circumstances that Selina almost laughed. Roman was the one bleeding out on a basement surgical table, yet he was asking if she was okay. "No," she admitted, "but I will be." "Good." His fingers tightened weakly around hers. "Because this isn't over. Katerina's dead, but there will be others, always others, people who want revenge or power or just to prove they can hurt us. That's the price of the life we chose." "I know." "And you're still here?" Selina looked at him. This violent, damaged man who'd torn apart his empire to keep her safe. Who'd walked into death traps because the alternative was leaving her vulnerable. Who looked at her like she was the only thing anchoring him to humanity. "I'm still here," she said. Roman smiled. It was tired and pain-filled and absolutely genuine. "Then we'll figure out the rest tomorrow." He drifted back into unconsciousness while Selina kept watch over him in the darkness. Somewhere above them, Chicago moved through its morning routines. Police investigated the massacre at the Meridian. Journalists wrote breathless stories about gang violence. Politicians gave speeches about law and order. And here, in this nameless safe house, with blood still staining her hands, Selina Vale sat beside the man she loved and accepted that she'd become exactly the kind of person she'd spent her life trying to save others from. A killer. A fugitive. Someone who'd traded her soul for the lives of strangers who'd never know what she'd sacrificed. But as Roman's chest rose and fell with steady breathing, as dawn light crept through the basement window and touched his scarred skin, Selina realized something fundamental had changed. She wasn't sorry, and she never would be. Roman woke 3 days later in a bedroom Selina didn't recognize. Pale morning light filtered through curtains that looked handmade. The air smelled like pine and wood smoke instead of Chicago's familiar mix of exhaust and lake water. For a moment, Selina thought they'd somehow escaped to somewhere peaceful. Then Roman tried to sit up and gasped, pain lancing through his reopened wounds. "Don't move," Selina ordered, pressing him back down. "You've got 18 stitches holding you together. Moving breaks them." Roman's eyes focused on her slowly. "Where are we?" "Wisconsin, small town called Ashford. Marcus brought us here after you stabilized." She adjusted his IV drip. Population 3,000. No traffic cameras, no organized crime presence. The kind of place where strangers get noticed but not reported unless they cause trouble. How long? 3 days. You've been in and out. Mostly out. Selina sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to jostle him. The doctor says you'll recover fully if you actually rest this time, but you lost enough blood that you should be dead twice over. Your body's running on spite and stubbornness at this point. Roman's mouth curved slightly. That sounds accurate. They were quiet for a moment. Selina studied his face, the new lines around his eyes, the gray showing in his stubble, the exhaustion that went deeper than physical injury. Roman Dragunov had spent 20 years building an empire through violence and control. Now that empire was crumbling because he'd chosen one person over everything else. Chicago's a mess, Selina said quietly. I've been watching the news. The Meridian Hotel massacre is all over every channel. They're calling it gang warfare, turf dispute between competing organizations. The police have 15 different theories and no actual suspects. Because Katerina's people cleaned the scene before authorities arrived. Roman's voice was rough from disuse. They'll have removed any evidence linking us to what happened. Can't risk exposure of their own operations. So we're safe? From legal consequences? Probably. From Katerina's associates seeking revenge? That's more complicated. Roman finally managed to sit up despite Selina's protests. Victor's organization was massive. Katerina controlled maybe 40% of it. The rest belonged to regional lieutenants who hated her anyway. With her dead, they're too busy fighting each other for power to waste resources hunting us. Dmitri called me. The night we escaped. He said we did the world a favor. Roman's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise. Dmitri's one of the lieutenants. If he called to thank you, it means the power vacuum's already resolving in ways favorable to us. Smart move on his part. He's positioning himself as the reasonable successor while his competitors tear each other apart. Selina absorbed that. The man who'd thanked her for murder was himself a criminal, but one who apparently preferred less brutal methods than Katerina. It was a hierarchy of monsters, and she'd just helped rearrange it. I can't go back to Chicago, she said. Not a question. A statement of fact. No, not for a long time. Maybe never. Roman reached for her hand. I'm sorry. I know your clinic, your patients. Your entire life was there. I took that from you. You didn't take anything. I made my choice. Selina's fingers tightened around his. But I need to know what happens now. We can't hide in Wisconsin forever. Eventually someone will notice us, ask questions, and we're not exactly equipped for small-town life. No, we're not. Roman was quiet for a moment. I have resources outside Chicago. Properties I bought under shell corporations years ago. Money in offshore accounts, connections in cities across the country and overseas. We can disappear, start over somewhere new, build different lives. Doing what? You're a crime lord. I'm a doctor with 3 murders attached to my name. We're not exactly hireable. Then we don't get hired. We build something ourselves. Roman met her eyes directly. I'm done with the empire, Selina. Done with violence as a business model. Katerina was right about one thing. I went soft. But not because of weakness, because I finally found something worth preserving that doesn't require blood to maintain. You mean me? I mean us. This. Whatever we've become together. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I've spent 20 years being a monster Chicago feared. Maybe it's time I tried being something else. Selina wanted to believe him, wanted to think they could walk away from violence and build something clean. But she'd seen too much in the last week. Knew too well how trauma carved grooves into people that never fully smoothed out. You can't just stop being who you are, she said quietly. No, but I can choose what I become next. Roman shifted carefully, wincing at the pull of stitches. I'll never be good, Selina. That ship sailed decades ago, but maybe I can be better. And maybe with you beside me, I can find a way to live that doesn't end with more bodies in warehouses. Before Selina could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs outside. She tensed automatically, hand moving toward the gun Marcus had left on the nightstand. But it was just Marcus himself, carrying groceries and looking exhausted. You're awake, he said to Roman. Good. We need to talk. What happened? Marcus set down the groceries and pulled out his phone. Dmitri reached out. He's consolidating control of Victor's eastern operations, 3 other lieutenants are backing him. Katerina's loyalists are being marginalized or eliminated. The organization's restructuring fast. And us? Dmitri sent this. Marcus held up his phone, showing a brief text message. Consider your debt cleared. Stay gone. Stay quiet. And we'll pretend the Meridian never happened. Roman read it twice. He's offering us a clean exit. More than that, he's guaranteeing it. As long as we don't interfere with his consolidation, he'll make sure no one comes looking. Marcus pocketed his phone. It's a good deal, Roman. Maybe the only one we're going to get. Selina watched Roman process this, saw him weighing options, calculating risks, doing the mental math that had kept him alive for 2 decades. Finally, he nodded once. Tell Dmitri we accept. We're gone. Permanently. Marcus nodded and left to make arrangements. Selina sat beside Roman in the quiet bedroom, listening to wind rustle through trees outside. It felt surreal. 3 days ago, they'd been jumping out of a building while being shot at. Now they were negotiating safe passage with the same organization they'd just decimated. Is it really that simple? She asked. We just leave? Nothing's ever simple, but yes, if Dmitri keeps his word, and he has more incentive to do that than to break it, we can disappear. Build new identities. Start over somewhere no one knows our faces. Roman studied her expression. But you need to understand what that means, Selina. No contact with anyone from your old life. No checking on former patients. No calling friends or family. We become ghosts. Completely. Selina thought about the elderly man with diabetes, the single mother, the teenager with the stab wound, all the people she'd spent years caring for, now moving through their lives without her. She'd never know if they stayed healthy, never see them recover, never hear their gratitude or complaints or stories. She'd saved them by killing for them, and now she had to abandon them completely. Okay, she heard herself say. Where do we go? Roman's expression softened. Where do you want to go? Somewhere warm, with an ocean, where I can practice medicine without questions and you can figure out who you are when you're not running an empire. That's specific. I've had 3 days to think about it while watching you sleep. Selina managed a tired smile. I want sunlight and water and a life where we're not constantly looking over our shoulders. I want to wake up without checking for threats. I want normal, or whatever passes for normal when you're in love with a retired crime lord. I like the word retired. Don't get used to it yet. You're still technically wanted for questioning in about 15 different investigations. Roman laughed, then winced at the pain it caused. Then I guess we should leave before they start connecting dots. They spent the next week in Wisconsin while Roman healed and Marcus arranged their exit. New identities, new passports, money transferred through enough shell corporations that tracking it would take years. A house in a coastal town in Mexico where American law enforcement had limited reach and local authorities could be convinced to look the other way. Selina watched it all happen with the detached fascination of someone observing their own life from outside. She'd been Dr. Selina Vale for 34 years. Now she was becoming someone else. Someone without history or credentials or connections. Just a woman with a violent past and uncertain future. On their last night in Ashford, she walked through the small house one final time, making sure nothing was left behind, no evidence, no trace they'd ever been here. Marcus had been thorough, but Selina's medical training made her paranoid about details. She found Roman sitting on the back porch, staring at stars that actually visible away from Chicago's light pollution. He'd regained some strength, could move without gasping now, but he was quieter than before, more thoughtful. Having second thoughts? Selina asked, sitting beside him. About leaving? No. About everything that led here? Roman was quiet for a moment. Every day. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called. Wind moved through pine trees with a sound like whispered secrets. This place was peaceful in a way neither of them had experienced in years. Maybe ever. I keep thinking about the moment I walked into your clinic, Roman said finally. If I'd been 5 minutes later, if Cassian had hit you before I arrived, if you'd refused my help, any of those things, and we wouldn't be here. We'd probably both be dead, Selina said. Me killed by Cassian's people. You eventually taken down by someone like Katerina who found the right weakness to exploit. So we saved each other. Or we destroyed each other. Depends on your perspective. Selina leaned against his shoulder carefully. I murdered 3 people, Roman. I'm a doctor. My entire identity was built around preserving life. Now I'm someone who kills. I don't know how to reconcile that. You don't. You just carry it. Roman's arm came around her shoulders. Every person I've killed stays with me. I remember their faces. The moment they realized they were going to die. The weight of it never gets lighter. You just get stronger at bearing it. That's bleak. That's honest. Selina closed her eyes and breathed in the cool night air. Do you think we're bad people? I think we're complicated people who made difficult choices in impossible situations. Roman's voice was soft. Bad people don't spend 8 years treating patients who can't pay. Don't protect women fleeing abuse. Don't sacrifice everything to keep strangers safe. You're not bad, Selina. You're just human. And humans are capable of both remarkable compassion and terrible violence, sometimes in the same breath. And you? I'm a monster who fell in love with someone good enough to make me want to be better. That doesn't erase what I've done, but maybe it gives me something to build toward. They watched stars wheel overhead while the night grew colder. Eventually, Roman stood with only a slight wince and extended his hand. Come on, we should sleep. Marcus wants to leave before dawn. Selina took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They went inside together, double-checked locks and alarms one final time, and climbed into bed in this temporary safe house that would soon be just another place they'd occupied and abandoned. Roman? Selina said in the darkness. Yeah? I don't regret any of it. Everything I did, everything I lost. I'd do it all again if it meant ending up here with you. Roman pulled her closer, his steady heartbeat against her back. I know. That's what scares me most. How easily we chose each other over everything else. Shouldn't that make you happy? It does, and it terrifies me. Because now I understand how people become the villains in someone else's story. They find something they can't live without, and they burn the world to keep it. Selina turned in his arms until she could see his face in the dim light filtering through curtains. Then maybe we're both villains now. Maybe. Roman kissed her forehead. But at least we're villains together. They left Wisconsin before sunrise. Marcus drove them to a private airfield where a small plane waited with a pilot who asked no questions and filed no flight plans. They flew south through brightening sky while America disappeared beneath clouds and distance. Selina watched Chicago's skyline fade into memory through the window. Somewhere down there, her clinic was probably opening for the day. Patients arriving with their familiar complaints and injuries. A replacement doctor hired to fill her sudden absence. Life moving on without her like she'd never existed. She'd spent 8 years building something meaningful in that city. Now it was gone. Erased. Reduced to news reports about a missing doctor and speculation that never quite landed on the truth. The elderly man with diabetes would find a new physician. The single mother would learn to navigate the system without Selina's guidance. The teenager with the stab wound would heal and hopefully avoid whatever violence had marked him in the first place. They'd survive without her. That knowledge should have brought comfort. Instead, Selina just felt empty. You're thinking too much, Roman said beside her. I'm grieving. I know, that's normal. His hand found hers. You lost your entire identity overnight. That's not something you just get over. How long did it take you? To stop being who I was before the violence? Roman was quiet for a long time. I'll let you know when it happens. They landed in Mexico 8 hours later. Marcus had arranged everything, a car waiting at the small airport, directions to the house he'd purchased under a fake corporation, contact information for local fixers who could provide whatever they needed without asking why. The house sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, small, isolated, beautiful in a way that made Selina's chest ache. White walls, tile floors, furniture simple and functional, nothing like Roman's Chicago penthouse or the safe houses they'd occupied during their escape. This felt like a home. Marcus helped them unload supplies, went over security protocols one final time, and then stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable. This is where I leave you, he said. Roman nodded slowly. You're going back. Someone needs to manage the transition. Make sure Dmitri keeps his word. Protect the few assets you're leaving behind. Marcus glanced at Selina. And someone needs to keep an eye on Dr. Vale's former patients. Make sure they stay safe like you promised. Selina's throat tightened. You don't have to do that. Yeah, I do. Marcus's expression softened fractionally. You saved Roman's life. Multiple times. That means you're family now, and family looks out for each other. He left before either of them could respond, driving back toward the airport and whatever complicated life waited for him in Chicago's underworld. Selena and Roman stood together on the porch, watching the ocean move beneath afternoon sun. Waves crashed against rocks below with hypnotic rhythm. Seabirds circled overhead. The air tasted like salt and possibility. This is it, Selena said quietly. Our new life. Are you ready for it? I don't know. Are you? Roman considered the question seriously. I've spent 20 years being Roman Dragunov. The name alone made people afraid. Now I'm whoever we decide I should be. It's disorienting. We'll figure it out together. Selena leaned against him. Maybe you can learn to cook. I've always been terrible at it. I'm a crime lord, not a chef. Former crime lord. And you're going to have a lot of free time now. Might as well spend it doing something useful. Roman laughed. It sounded genuine, lighter than any sound Selena had heard from him since they met. All right, I'll learn to cook, but you have to teach me something medical. I should know how to treat injuries properly instead of just causing them. Deal. They went inside together, explored the house room by room, claiming spaces and making plans for what they'd build here. Roman found a room with good light and decided it would be his office. Selena discovered a small greenhouse attached to the back and thought about growing medicinal herbs. Normal things, domestic things. The kind of life neither of them had ever really had. That night, they sat on the porch drinking cheap wine and watching sunset paint the ocean in shades of fire. Selena felt Roman's presence beside her like an anchor, solid, real, the only certainty in a life that had been completely upended. I need to tell you something, Roman said as darkness gathered. Something I should have said weeks ago. Selena turned to face him. What? The night I walked into your clinic, I'd been watching you for months. Roman's expression was unreadable in the dim light. I own the building. Your clinic's lease goes through one of my shell corporations. I'd been reading the reports about you. How you never turned anyone away. How you treated gang members and cops with the same compassion. How you were burning yourself out trying to save a neighborhood that couldn't be saved. Selena's stomach dropped. You were spying on me? I was fascinated by you. This woman who kept choosing kindness in a city built on violence, who looked at the worst humanity had to offer and refused to become cynical. Roman met her eyes directly. When I saw Cassian on the security footage that night, heading toward your clinic with obvious violent intent, I didn't have to intervene. I could have let it play out, could have stayed in my office and let fate decide what happened. But you didn't. No, because I'd already spent months half in love with someone I'd never met, and the thought of you being hurt by that entitled bastard made me homicidal. Roman's voice was soft. So I'm telling you now. Our meeting wasn't fate, it was orchestrated by me, because I saw something I wanted and took it the only way I knew how. Selena should have been angry, should have felt manipulated. Instead, she just felt tired. You watched me for months and fell in love with a version of me that might not be real. Maybe. But then I met you, the real you, and realized the version I'd imagined didn't come close to the truth. Roman reached for her hand. You're harder than I thought, more capable of violence, more willing to make impossible choices, and I love that version even more. But you deserve to know the truth, that nothing about us was accidental. Selena looked out at the ocean. Waves continued their eternal rhythm, indifferent to human drama playing out on the cliff above. She thought about all the moments that had led here, the choices made and unmade, the lines crossed and recrossed until she couldn't find her way back to who she'd been. I should be furious, she said finally. I know. I should feel violated, manipulated, used. You should, but I'm too tired to be angry anymore. Selena squeezed his hand. And honestly, I'm glad you intervened. Glad you watched me. Glad you orchestrated everything. Because the alternative is Cassian killing me and you eventually dying alone in some pointless gang war. At least this way, we're both alive. Together. Building something new. Roman was quiet for a long moment. I don't deserve you. No, you don't. But you're stuck with me anyway. They sat together while stars appeared overhead. brighter here than they'd ever been in Chicago, unobscured by light pollution and the constant haze of urban life. Selina tried to identify constellations she half remembered from childhood. Roman told her stories about growing up in violence, learning to survive in systems designed to destroy people like him. They were sharing their histories finally, not the sanitized versions they'd shown each other during stolen moments between crises. But the truth. Raw, ugly, human. "My mother died when I was 12, Roman said. Overdose. Father was never in the picture. I ended up in foster care, bounced around between homes where nobody wanted another broken kid with anger issues. By 15, I was running errands for local criminals. By 20, I'd killed my first person." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you shared your truth. About your mother dying because the system failed her. How that shaped everything you became." Roman stared at the ocean. "I want you to understand where my violence comes from. It's not just cruelty. It's survival instinct carved so deep it became my only language." Selina absorbed that. "And now? Now I'm trying to learn new languages, trying to figure out how to exist without violence as my default setting." Roman turned to face her. "But I need you to know that it's always going to be there, under the surface, waiting. I can control it. I can choose not to use it, but I can't erase 20 years of conditioning. I'm not asking you to erase anything. I'm just asking you to try." Selina moved closer. "We're both broken, Roman. We've both done terrible things. But maybe broken people can build something whole together. Maybe that's the point." Roman kissed her then, soft, careful, like she was something precious that might shatter. Selina kissed him back and tasted salt air and wine and the strange, bitter hope that came from starting over. They made love that night in their new bedroom overlooking the Pacific. Slow, deliberate, mapping each other's scars with gentle hands and understanding that they were both survivors of different wars, trying to find peace in the aftermath. Afterward, Selina lay awake listening to Roman breathe beside her. His wounds were finally healing. His nightmares had lessened. He looked younger in sleep, less like a monster and more like a man who'd simply been tired for too long. She thought about the person she'd been 3 weeks ago. Dr. Selina Vale working herself to exhaustion in a Chicago clinic, believing she could fix broken systems through individual compassion. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone naive and idealistic and doomed to fail. This version of herself was harder, more realistic, capable of violence when necessary. She didn't know if that was better or worse, just different. Maybe that was enough. The next morning, Selina walked into the nearby town and found a small medical clinic struggling to serve an underserved community. She introduced herself as a doctor from the United States looking for volunteer work. Didn't mention her lack of credentials in Mexico. Didn't explain why she'd left her previous position. The clinic director was too desperate for help to ask many questions. Within a week, Selina was seeing patients again. Different faces, different languages. Same suffering wearing new masks. Poverty, violence, preventable diseases that flourished because people couldn't afford treatment. She fell back into the rhythm easily, stitching wounds, prescribing medication, holding hands while delivering bad news. The work was familiar in a way nothing else in her life was anymore. Roman spent his days learning to be someone new. He read extensively, taught himself to cook with varying degrees of success, started taking long walks along the beach where no one knew his name or feared his presence. He still woke sometimes in the middle of the night, reaching for weapons that weren't there, before remembering where he was and who he'd become. But those moments grew less frequent. 3 months passed like this. Quiet, domestic, almost normal. Then Ivy called. Selina was treating a child with a respiratory infection when her phone buzzed with the encrypted number she'd memorized. She finished the consultation, prescribed antibiotics the family probably couldn't afford, and stepped outside to answer. "Ivy?" Her voice came out uncertain. She'd accepted that everyone from her old life was gone forever. Hearing Ivy's familiar voice felt like a ghost materializing. "Dr. Vale, I'm sorry. I know you're supposed to be gone, but I had to call. Had to tell you." Ivy's voice broke. "You saved my life, not just from Cassian, from everything, and I needed you to know that I'm okay now. Really okay. I finished nursing school. I'm working at a hospital. I have my own apartment and friends who don't know anything about who I used to be. I'm happy. Selena's throat tightened. I'm glad. Marcus told me what you did, what you sacrificed to keep me safe. The people you... Ivy trailed off. I don't know how to thank you for that. How to live with knowing someone died so I could be free. You live well, Selena said quietly. You take every day I bought you and you make it matter. That's how you thank me. I will, I promise. Ivy was crying now. And Dr. Vale, I hope wherever you are, you're happy too. You deserve that, after everything. The line disconnected. Selena stood outside the clinic with her phone pressed to her ear long after the call ended. She thought about the woman Ivy had been 3 months ago, terrified, broken, trapped in a marriage that was slowly killing her. And now she was free, happy. Building a life that Cassian couldn't touch because Cassian was dead and his entire world had collapsed. One person saved, at the cost of 3 people killed. Selena still didn't know if that math worked out to good or evil. But she knew Ivy was alive, and that felt like enough. She went back inside and treated the rest of her patients. When her shift ended, she walked home along the coastal road as sunset painted everything gold and orange. Roman was on the porch waiting for her, and she could smell something burning from the kitchen. You tried to cook again, she observed. It was supposed to be chicken. I think it's charcoal now. Selena laughed, actually laughed. The sound felt foreign in her mouth. Come on, I'll show you how to salvage it. They spent the evening in the kitchen together, Roman following instructions while Selena corrected his technique. It was domestic, mundane, the kind of thing normal couples did without thinking about it. They weren't normal, would never be normal. But they were trying. That night, lying in bed with ocean sounds drifting through open windows, Roman pulled Selena against him and spoke into the darkness. Marcus called. Dmitri wants to meet. Selena tensed. Why? He's consolidating power faster than expected. Most of Victor's old organization has fallen in line behind him. He's restructuring the whole operation. Less trafficking, more traditional organized crime. Still illegal, but less monstrous. Roman's voice was careful. He wanted me to know that he's keeping his word. Your patients are safe. Your clinic's been taken over by someone good, and no one's coming after us. That's good news. He also offered me a job. Consultant, help him build legitimate business ventures to launder money through. Full immunity. No violence required. Roman was quiet for a moment. I told him no. Selena turned to face him. Why? Because I'm done with that life. All of it. Even the cleaned up versions. Roman's eyes reflected moonlight through the window. I spent 20 years building an empire I didn't even want. I'm not going back. Not even as a consultant. What will we do for money eventually? Your offshore accounts won't last forever. I'm working on that. There's a property development opportunity in town. Completely legitimate. Building affordable housing for locals. I've been talking to the investors. Roman smiled slightly. Turns out my skills in negotiation and risk assessment transfer pretty well to legal business. Who knew? Selena kissed him. I'm proud of you. For what? Doing the bare minimum of being a decent human? For trying. For choosing something different. For not being the person everyone expected you to become. She rested her forehead against his. We're both trying. That has to count for something. It does. It counts for everything. They fell asleep tangled together while the ocean moved outside and the world spun on without caring about 2 broken people trying to build something worth keeping. 6 months later, Selena delivered her first baby in the Mexican clinic. The mother was young, barely 20, and terrified. First pregnancy. No family present, just her and Selena in a delivery room that smelled like disinfectant and fear. The labor was long, complicated. Selena had to make decisions based on limited equipment and even more limited resources. But when the baby finally arrived, screaming and perfect, Selena felt something crack open inside her chest. She'd brought life into the world. After months of carrying death on her hands, she'd created something beautiful. The mother cried. Selena cried. The baby cried. And for the first time since killing 3 people in a Chicago penthouse, Selena felt like maybe redemption wasn't completely impossible. She came home that night to find Roman cooking dinner without burning it. He'd gotten better over the months. could now make several dishes that were actually edible. "You look different," he observed. "I delivered a baby today." Selena sat at their small kitchen table. A healthy, perfect little girl who has no idea how close she came to not existing. Her mother almost didn't make it. We didn't have the equipment for a C-section if things went wrong. I had to rely on skill and luck, and whatever prayers I still remember. But they both survived. They both survived. Selena looked at her hands. "I've spent 6 months thinking about the people I killed, cataloging every moment, every choice, wondering if I'm too broken to ever be a real doctor again, and then today happened. Today I saved 2 lives instead of taking them. And it felt like maybe I'm not completely lost." Roman sat across from her. "You were never lost, Selena. You were just in a situation with no good options. You made the best choice you could with what you had. I murdered people. You protected people. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." Roman reached for her hand. "Intent matters. Method matters. You didn't kill because you enjoyed it. You killed because it was the only way to keep innocent people alive. That's not the same as what I've done. What I spent years doing without question or remorse." Selena studied his face. He looked healthier now. The haunted expression had faded. He smiled more easily, laughed at small things. He'd found work with the housing development and discovered he actually enjoyed creating something instead of destroying it. They were both healing, slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably. "I love you," Selena said. "I don't think I've told you that enough. You tell me every time you look at me like I'm worth saving." Roman's thumb traced circles on her palm. "And I love you too, more than I thought I was capable of loving anything." They ate dinner together while darkness fell outside, talked about their days, made plans for the weekend, existed in the mundane normalcy they'd built from the wreckage of their old lives. It wasn't perfect. Some nights, Selena still woke gasping from nightmares about the Meridian, about Katerina's eyes going wide as bullets tore through her, about blood spreading across white marble. Some nights, Roman still reached for weapons that weren't there, still calculated exits and threats with reflexes that wouldn't fade. They were both permanently marked by what they'd done, what they'd been forced to become. But they were also building something new, something that acknowledged their damage while refusing to be defined by it. A year after leaving Chicago, Selena received a package. No return address, just a manila envelope with her fake name written in precise handwriting. She opened it carefully, half expecting threats or evidence of their crimes finally catching up. Instead, she found photographs. The elderly man with diabetes smiling at his granddaughter's wedding, the single mother laughing with her kids at a park, the teenager with the stab wound now in a college graduation gown. Every patient she'd worried about documented and thriving. A note was included. Marcus's handwriting, "They're all okay, thought you'd want to know." Selena showed the photographs to Roman that evening. They sat on their porch overlooking the ocean, passing images back and forth while sun set in the distance. "They made it," Selena whispered. "Everyone I was afraid for. They all made it." "Because of you," Roman said quietly. "Because you were willing to become something you hated to protect them. Was it worth it? 3 lives taken for dozens saved? I don't know. That's the question philosophers have been asking forever without finding answers." Roman set down the photographs. "But I know you made the best choice you could in an impossible situation. And because of that choice, these people are alive. Their children and grandchildren will exist. Entire futures branching out from the moment you pulled that trigger. That has to count for something." Selena thought about Katerina's face as she died, the guard she'd shot without hesitation, the weight that had settled into her bones in that penthouse and never fully lifted. "I'm never going to feel okay about killing them," she said. "Good. The day you feel okay about taking lives is the day you become what I used to be, and I'd rather you stay exactly as you are, someone who carries the weight but doesn't let it crush her." Roman pulled her closer. "We're both trying to be better than our worst moments. That's all anyone can do." They sat together while the sun disappeared and stars emerged overhead. Selena thought about the life she'd built here, the patients she treated, the community she'd become part of, the man beside her who'd burned his empire because she asked him to. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't the future she'd imagined when she'd first graduated medical school full of idealism and naive hope. But it was real, and it was hers. And maybe that was enough, 2 years after leaving Chicago, Roman asked Selena to marry him. They were on the beach at dawn. Roman had been teaching himself to fish with limited success. Selena had been reading medical journals, trying to stay current despite her lack of official credentials. He didn't kneel, didn't make a speech, just pulled a simple silver ring from his pocket and held it out. "I don't have a speech prepared," he said. "Don't have promises about forever or guarantees that we won't fuck this up. But I know I want to wake up next to you every day, want to build whatever time we have left together, and I'd like to make that official, if you'll have me." Selena took the ring, studied it in the early morning light. It was simple, unpretentious. Nothing like the ostentatious jewelry Roman probably could have afforded. "Yes," she said. They were married by a local official who didn't ask too many questions about their paperwork. No guests, no ceremony. Just two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and somehow made it work anyway. Selena wore a simple white dress. Roman wore the only suit he still owned. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Promises to keep trying, to stay honest, to build something worth keeping from the wreckage of who they'd been. And when the official pronounced them married, Roman kissed her with the kind of desperate tenderness that came from knowing how close they'd come to never having this moment. That night, they stood on their porch overlooking the Pacific and watched the sun set on their wedding day. Selena leaned against Roman's chest, his arms wrapped around her, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the absence of guilt or the erasure of their past, but the quiet acceptance that they'd done terrible things for reasons that made sense at the time, that they were both trying to be better, that they'd found something worth protecting in each other. "Do you ever regret it?" Selena asked quietly. "Everything you gave up for me?" "Every day," Roman admitted. "And then I look at you and remember why I did it, and the regret fades. What if someone finds us? What if Dimitri changes his mind or the police connect the dots, or then we deal with it, together?" Roman's arms tightened around her. "But until that happens, we keep building this life, keep trying to be people worth being, keep proving that monsters can learn to be something else when they find the right reason." Selena turned in his arms until she could see his face. "And what's your reason?" "You, always you." They kissed while the ocean moved beneath them and the sky bled color into darkness. Two broken people who'd found each other in violence and built something resembling wholeness from the pieces that remained. It wasn't a fairy tale. Wasn't a redemption story that erased their crimes or made them heroes. But it was real, and it was theirs. And in a world that had tried repeatedly to destroy them both, that felt like victory enough. Roman Dragunov never became good, but he became hers. And Dr. Selena Vale, now Selena Dragunov, though only a handful of people knew that name, never forgave herself for the lives she'd taken. But she kept saving lives anyway. One patient at a time. Building a legacy that would eventually outweigh her crimes, even if she never lived long enough to see the balance tip. They weren't perfect. They were just human, capable of both remarkable compassion and terrible violence. And somehow together they'd found a way to choose compassion more often than not. That wasn't redemption, but it was enough.